trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a number of, a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
We came, we saw, we died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee, Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking out. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
It's not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, we have returned for yet another episode of the Polyticks show, and it's good to be back. The way that my kind of whole MO has been working lately is I have been doing blue collar work, living life as a, typical blue collar worker, trying to get through the, day, the week, the month in this amazing economy. Maybe it's anecdotal. Let me know if you've seen anything different, but I do feel like the economy is not getting better, despite Trump's best efforts to kind of paper over what's going on. And now I hope that changes. I hope that some of the things that he's doing eventually do work out for the better. But so far, I'm seeing the price of eggs going up. I'm seeing the price of everything continuing to go up. Not a lot of the job market isn't great. One of my relatives who orders parts for stuff internationally, it took them like 3 weeks to get stuff because of tariff issues and all that kind of stuff. So, maybe we're still in a transitional period. I've said this before. I'm not the kind of person I'm not trying to be partisan about anything, because I know that they would have done the same thing that they're doing, the same things that they're doing to Donald Trump, to Bernie Sanders, or any leftist Democrat who got in, who was doing anything to change anything of note, because as we know, the status quo is what these people mostly are here to defend. And that's why they're put in place by donors who want to keep things from changing for the better for the average person. That's just the reality of the situation. So we got a lot of good stories for you today. And I titled this episode, Nothing is Real, because nothing is real, especially if you, there's a little bit of a play on words there. But the main thing, of course, being the Charlie Kirk debacle that's going on right now, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But that just seemed like the running theme for all the stories I wanted to talk about this week. And there's way too much for me to cover everything. I just saw the clip of Jillian Michaels rage quitting on Anna Kasparian because she criticized Israel, and Jillian didn't have a intellectually sound response to the things Anna was saying, which you see a lot amongst these Zionists. And you will see in a later segment we're going to do about Dave Smith and Brandon Tatum. But we're going to start today with probably the most fake thing that I've seen happen in years. And this is one of those things where if you were not a very internet person, or not a very online type of person, you miss this, because there were conflicting narratives. And this is January 6th. At the time that it happened, we were on lockdown still from COVID. So, people were being fed what was real through the news. And I remember at the time I was working for a large corporation. I won't say their name, but we were doing Zoom calls. It was everything. Everyone was working from home. And I just remember how distraught so many people were over the events of January 6th at that time, and the way that the narrative was being fed to people. And I just remember in our corporate meetings, people just being like, "Oh my God, this is insane. Democracy is under attack." And then I also remember, and I've told this story before, we had a meeting that day with some people from Europe. And I remember the French woman talking about January 6th, and she goes, "To me, it looks like the yellow vests, only they aren't really doing anything." And I just thought that was so appropriate, because it was like, yeah, it looks like they're trying to be revolutionary, but they're really just a bunch of pussies who aren't doing anything that's like really going to affect anything, like the yellow vests in France were doing. And so even then, I was skeptical. And also I was a very online person. So I saw a lot of the online journalists who were actually at January 6th, and none of them were right wing either. Fiorella Isabella was one of the people who's now based in Russia, who I was following at the time, who covered this. And all the lefty journalists were saying, hey, this is not an insurrection. There are a few people acting up, but it looks more than anything like almost like some kind of a honey trap to some extent, where, these people are kind of being set up. And this is, one of those iconic photos that you saw at the time. This is the New York Times articles and the Washington Post articles had this photo, like, look at these miscreants taking over the Capitol. Oh my God. Oh, they're all fucking, they're all insurrectionists and they're going to overthrow the government. It's the most insane thing that I've ever seen. I can't believe it. I just can't, don't tase me, bro. Anyway, this all came crumbling down today. Not really today, but it's the evidence is going to be released. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, this is just a distraction from the Epstein files and the Charlie Kirk thing that's going on. I don't disagree, but it's good that this stuff is coming out. So let's dive into it head first. So this was a tweet I saw this morning from Tim Pool. And what he had to say here was, shortly after J6, AOC told a story on Instagram where she said there was a banging on her door and she thought the rioters made it to her office. Now, if you remember, that story was widely debunked because I believe it was Capitol Police that knocked, if I remember correctly. And I don't want to overstep my bounds here. But I believe that she was eventually debunked as it being okay, so here we go. Let me just show you this real quick. This was actually a Capitol Police officer. So even though Tim's saying here, let me read Tim's full tweet before I show you this kind of debunking. He says, conservatives slammed her as her office is not in the Capitol. However, liberals pointed out there are tunnels that connect them. The only problem, AOC's story took place an hour or so before the Capitol was actually breached. We joked she must have had foreknowledge the riots were going to happen. Maybe it wasn't a joke. Now, I don't think it's that wide of a conspiracy, to be honest. This is what I think actually happened, and this is the proof of what happened. From Google AI, let's read this real quick. During the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, a Capitol Police officer entered Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's office in an alarming manner. Ocasio-Cortez, hiding in a bathroom, initially did not know the individual's identity because the officer did not announce himself. Key details of the event. The encounter occurred during the January 26, 2021 insurrection when a pro-Trump mob stormed the U.S. Capitol. So even these guys are still... A man banged on the office door and shouted, "Where is she?" Ocasio-Cortez hid in her office bathroom and described fearing for her life. The individual turned out to be a Capitol Police officer, but he was not wearing a uniform and did not identify himself. So there you go. It was really just a Capitol Police officer. So I want to show you the video that's attached to that Tim kind of retweeted here. Because it goes into a lot more detail about what's going on right now with this story. And it's a big one. So let me just fix this a little bit. All right. So here's the tweet that Timmy retweeted here. And this is from John Strand. Wow. Congressional source now confirming nearly 300 FBI operatives embedded in the crowd on J6. Here's one of them breaking into the Capitol and blaming it on an innocent bystander. J6 was a Fedsurrection setup. Just like I've said for 4 years, they ruined our lives for a scam. Let's fix this.
Do not go in there.
A radio journalist from Michigan was shooting video that day at the Capitol. What he captured were two most charitably called suspicious actors, but they were dressed in such a way that led him to believe that they were government agents. And one of them, after the windows had been broken by a protester, it was encouraging people to pull the rest of the glass out and go inside. Bobby Powell, who was the journalist that had shot it, and he has his camera rolling, he told him that would be illegal and that wouldn't be a good idea. He warned people off not to go into that window. And then he turned his camera around and he caught this agent or suspicious actor pulling a large pane of glass out, this tempered glass. It kind of folds into itself, crunch onto the ground. When he realized he was being filmed, he quickly dropped it. It seems apparent on the video that he did not want to be seen doing what he just did. So he pulled in a protester and started blaming him. He said, "What are you doing breaking that window?" The poor fellow that was being accused didn't know what was going on. And then he gave him a couple of really good shoves and cocked his arm like he was going to punch him. We don't know. His facial image is not on any of the Sedition Hunters sites or the FBI's most wanted site. But he clearly was committing criminal damage to property, and he has not been charged. So it raises a question of why.
Also, the individual trying to, again, opening the window up is even encouraging people to enter, I believe, as well.
Yes.
What's he saying?
Well, he said, "Why don't y'all open the rest of it up?"
Why don't you guys open up the rest? Because I think that probably be illegal. Oh, I know my glasses.
Interesting stuff, huh? So if you follow me on Twitter and you have seen, am I frozen? What is going on? Okay, I'm not frozen. StreamYard's being very odd right now. Anyway, if you follow me on Twitter, my pinned tweet is something that I'm very proud of, and it's partially in the intro to my show as well. But it's a mashup of a clip I did of a debate between David Frum and Steve Bannon from way back in, I think it was like 2022, 2023. And in the clip, let me just show it to you. I don't need to recap it when I can just show you exactly what I'm talking about right here. Watch this. Some of us have been onto this for a while.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
So watch this. This is taken by a protester on January 6th, and you see this man with a club breaking one of the Capitol building windows, a violent insurrectionist. Now he has a Trump sticker on the back of his helmet. First of all, he's wearing a helmet. Second of all, there's a Trump sticker on the back of the fucking helmet. That is very, very suspicious. So then you see a guy in a MAGA hat from the crowd go after this guy, basically say, "Hey, what are you doing? You can't break the windows. You're gonna." This guy grabs the dude breaking the window and stops him. So it's MAGA attacking police officers, basically, which is what they want you to believe happened on January 6th. So, again, from the beginning of this, I have known it was a hoax. And then you have the reality that the hearings that they did following this event were completely manufactured dramatic television. And if you don't believe me, here is a headline from NPR about that. A former TV news executive, and this is from June 8th of 2022, a former TV news executive is producing the January 6th hearings. The congressional hearings on the January 6th insurrection are being staged for TV consumption in very differently than in the past, and most networks are taking them live. Fox News is the exception. So you had a completely manufactured television event built around a completely manufactured, real life event, it was not an insurrection by any real sense of the word. Sure, there were people that did bad stuff, and those people deserve what they got. They're on tape. If you broke a window, like this guy who's cracking the window with a bat, that guy should be in jail. He won't be in jail because, like David Frum said in my posted tweet, he's probably a Fed. He's a fucking, federal agent dressed as an Antifa guy trying to break a window with a Trump sticker on them. It's so upside down that people believe this. So to kind of top this off, you have also yesterday, maybe it was today, James Comey being indicted. And I don't know a ton about this because it's kind of breaking news, but I figured, we've got Glenn Greenwald here, and he's talking about it. So let's just listen to what your boy Glenn Greenwald has to say about the recent indictment of James Comey. Forgive my speed here.
Minutes ago, news broke that former FBI Director James Comey is now under federal indictment. A grand jury has returned an indictment on 2 of the 3 felony charges sought by the Trump Justice Department. One count of it is providing false statements either to Congress or to FBI investigators. The other is obstructing justice. And all of it has to do with allegedly false claims and deceitful information that Comey provided when the 2016 Russiagate investigation that took place during the 2016 campaign while he was FBI director that he oversaw, when investigations were taking place into how that investigation emerged, whether or not there were politicized corruption or other types of deceit and fraud, that he provided false information that misled investigators, misled Congress, and therefore obstructed justice, all of which are felonies. There was a third count that the Justice Department sought an indictment on, and the grand jury refused to indict him. So it's often said that grand juries will essentially indict anything that prosecutors ask for. Largely that's true. It's very, very difficult for a prosecutor to request a grand jury indict only for the grand jury to refuse, simply because by nature of a grand jury, there is no other side there. It's only the prosecutors, only the government presenting their version of events. You don't have cross-examination. You don't have the defendants presenting conflicting evidence, and there's no standard of beyond reasonable doubt, which is the standard for convicting somebody of a crime. It's a much lower standard, and so generally prosecutors can obtain the indictments they want, but not always, as evidenced by the fact that in this case, the grand jury did reject one of the 3 counts, but did indict Comey on 2 others. Now, at least as soon as we went on air, the indictment itself has not been released. So exact details of what the indictment provides is not known, but we know enough from the background of what has led up to this moment to be able to have a pretty clear understanding of what the nature of these charges are. It's obviously an extremely significant news event that a former director of the FBI has been indicted. It's particularly ironic since James Comey built his career on pursuing indictments very similar to the ones that he now faces. He did that with Martha Stewart. He did that with former General Michael Flynn, and in many other cases, bringing very dubious indictments. I'm not saying this is dubious, but bring very dubious indictments alleging false statements or perjury or obstruction of justice on big profile targets in order to advance his career. And now he himself faces and is required to swallow a lot of the medicine that he liked to dole out. Now, there is some background here that I think is very much worth understanding in order to assess this indictment. And namely,
so this is somewhat unrelated to the January 6th, thing. Oh, shit. This is somewhat unrelated to the January 6th thing coming undone. However, I kind of lump these two stories together because it just shows how corrupt the FBI is and how these types of operate. If you remember the Gretchen Whitmer thing is another great example of this, where they took a guy who was probably like borderline mentally ill and peppered all these feds. And basically, I don't remember how many people were involved in the kidnapping plot with Gretchen Whitmer, but I think it was something like 13 or 14, and like all but like 2 or 3 of them were federal agents. So I think this is relevant, but let's go a little further here and just listen to a little bit more what Glenn has.
Key crucial background is that just a couple of days ago, Donald Trump, in a very public way, chastised his own attorney general, Pam Bondi, for not having brought an indictment against James Comey yet, and essentially demanding that she do so, not just against Comey, but other people that Donald Trump has a lot of animosity toward, oftentimes for good reason. But this was a case where a president of the United States was not in secret interfering in the independence of the Justice Department, but very publicly demanding that his attorney general bring indictments against people he wants to see indicted. Now, it doesn't mean the indictments are invalid at all. In general, we have a protocol or a tradition where presidents don't interfere in specific prosecutorial decisions of the Justice Department, precisely to ensure that they can't abuse the Justice Department to prosecute or persecute their political enemies or to shield their political allies who have committed crimes. It's a protocol that really exists in name only. There are countless cases of essentially every president interfering in all sorts of ways in the Justice Department. So it's not one that I'm particularly shocked by or upset with, even though in general, I think it's better that presidents don't do this. But here's what Donald Trump did in very Trumpian style. And if it's going to be done, I prefer that it be done in public and not in secret, the way most presidents do it. He took to Truth Social on September 20th. So this was, today's the 21st, I believe. So this is yesterday, just yesterday. And he posted this, quote, Pam, meaning Pam Bondi, and there was a lot of questions as well, I have to say, about whether Trump thought he was sending her a personal email or whether he was deliberately.
So I apologize. I think at the beginning of this, I said this is from yesterday. I think it was from oh no. Okay. Yeah, it was 3 hours ago. So was it from a day or two, a couple days ago?
On Truth Social, because he directed it right to her. Though with Trump, he's not somebody who is easily predictable in terms of how he communicates. So it's very possible he did intend this to be public. And he wrote the following. Sorry, this was Saturday. So today's the 25th. So actually it was 5 days ago. He said this, quote, Pam, I have received over 30 statement and posts saying that essentially, quote, same old story as last time. All talk, no action. Nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia James? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. He was quoting people he was purportedly hearing from, presumably supporters who were angry, saying you keep talking a big game, but nothing's being done. These people aren't being indicted. And then Trump says in his own words, then we almost put in a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who is never going to do his job.
We don't need to go much further than that. But the reality is, as much as it sucks, and as much as it's politics, bad, basically political kind of retribution, I think it's warranted. And it sucks that the Democrats opened the door like this because of the stuff that they did to Trump. But I don't feel any bit of, regret or animosity about people like James Comey and John Bolton being indicted for lying, because they obviously tried to do the same thing to their political rivals. And basically, I think, I don't think it's out of line in the sense that, hey, if they didn't do anything illegal, they're about to go to court. He's just indicted, just like Trump was. Trump eventually won in court. So if there's really nothing illegally being done, they'll be fine. You know what I mean? They get to now face the same level of lawfare and scrutiny of their lives that Donald Trump faced, because he won politically. So before he won, they had the political power to do these things to him. Part of the reason I think he won is because people wanted to see this retribution to some degree, especially with the COVID thing. I think that a lot more people are upset about that than the media lets on. But that aside, I wanted to move on to something that's a little bit more, well, I was going to say lighthearted, but it's definitely not lighthearted. And it involves one of my favorite TV shows, South Park. So I have to say, I've been a long time fan of South Park. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. I still hold it in high regard. Don't get it twisted.
Well, f*** you, Kyle. I don't want to go yet.
But what I do believe is that lately they have gotten very hacky. And the reason I say that is because I don't know if you remember back in the day, they had an episode. It was like, I'm a little bit country, I'm a little bit rock and roll, where they kind of made fun of like the people who were anti-Obama and the people who were pro-Obama, both gave them equal, shit. And then they had the very famous giant douche and turd sandwich episode where they kind of likened voting to picking between a giant douche and a turd sandwich. And they're like, turd sandwich. And it was so good. But in recent years, they have taken this like partisan tack, just like the rest of the media, because everyone has been convinced that Trump is this like unique threat to democracy, right? And I have to say, I think South Park has misstepped in a lot of ways. So first of all, the reason, just to give you a couple of proofs of why I think they're hacky. The first thing they did was, if you remember, they had a timeline. If you're a fan of the show and you watch it, they had a timeline where Mr. Garrison was actually Trump. And so like they had this whole thing where Mr. Garrison was like secretly going out and doing these rallies behind his lover's back and stuff. And, they had this whole timeline of, and then Trump lost and they went back to normal. And they completely ignored Joe Biden entirely. Not one even mean, they just stayed completely out of politics while we had a dead guy at the helm of the country. A literal dead guy. Like this is all, most thinking people knew that Joe Biden was a dead guy before they crowbarred him in there to get rid of the Bernie Sanders threat. But now it's proven beyond a doubt that, he was asleep at the wheel the entire presidency. And, it just other people were running the ship. So South Park completely ignored making fun of that. I have a clip of Biden in my opening, drifting off and calling Zelensky President Putin and President of Ukraine, President Putin. And just, so much comedy gold there that South Park completely ignored. But as soon as Trump gets back into office, now they flip from the Mr. Garrison is Trump dynamic to this really lazy, he's Saddam Hussein now. Like, we're just going to go back and like revisit one of our tired old jokes about how Saddam Hussein was fucking Satan. And, now it's Trump is the evil dictator. So it's really just like they took it. They're rehashing one of their old plot lines to start. That's the first hacky thing. And then if you saw this Charlie Kirk episode, the whole thing is about, let's just watch this clip from New York Post. Before I get into more proofs of South Park's hackiness here. I think I don't know that they, so they have a clip of South Park in here, and I don't want to get in trouble for playing it. So maybe I'll just come in. No, we got to play this. We got to play at least the first part, because this kind of makes my point. This goes back to the point I'm making about South Park kind of getting honestly very hacky lately. So listen to, this is kind of them making fun of Charlie Kirk before he was killed.
If anyone around here is going to be a master debater, it's me. So let's go. Who wants to debate the master debater? Let's go. You right there.
Okay, so right off the bat, the master debater joke. That is a joke as old as time. That's a joke I made when I was in 5th grade. That's a very hacky joke. So you've already got multiple points against South Park this season. First, they're rehashing a tired plot line with Saddam Hussein and is an evil dictator, and he's having sex with Satan, and they're going to have a demonic butt baby. And it's just like, it's very dumb and hacky. And then you have, the master debater joke. Like, okay, wow, dude, that's a joke I made when I was in 5th grade, guys. You're real genius season, South Park. You're really showing how lazy you guys have gotten.
Haircut I've ever seen. You are wrong. Leviticus 3:17 says it shall be a perpetual statute for your generations throughout all your dwellings.
So here is a story about the most recent episode they did, and they kind of took a week off because after Charlie was murdered, they were making more criticisms of him, and they South Park never wanted to shy away from controversy. Controversy. I always say controversy like Hershey. Controversy shies away from controversy.
Abortions.
After Charlie Kirk was fatally gunned down while speaking at a college event yesterday, some MAGA supporters are pointing the finger at South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone, alleging they helped fuel the hate.
Let's stop right there. It is pretty wild how, the same people who would get mad about, remember when Matt and Trey got in trouble for doing the picture of Muhammad and causing like Muslims to like shoot people because they were mad at the cartoon? Same, like remember the Charlie Hebdo thing in France where they published a cartoon of Muhammad and Muslim terrorists attacked and killed them? You know, Matt and Trey are now you have the conservatives sounding like Muslims, like, oh, you did a thing that got a guy shot and you need to be canceled. So it's kind of where's my sound drop for situations like this? I think it's right here.
Isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Hatred that led to the conservative influencer's assassination as a result of one of the show's recent episodes. The second episode of season 27, titled Got a Nut, originally aired August 6th and immediately drew attention for lampooning Kirk's college speaking style. In the episode, one of the show's iconic characters, Eric Cartman, parodied Kirk, adopting his mannerisms for a satirical college debate podcast while sporting his iconic hairstyle and look. The lampoon climaxed with Cartman receiving the Charlie Kirk Award for Young Master Debaters. Days after the episode aired, Kirk himself laughed off the mockery.
Okay, everybody, the South Park episode just dropped, and honestly, it is hilarious. I mean, part of it is kind of like whatever, typical humor, but it was hilarious.
Kirk even told Fox News at the time he had grown up watching South Park and considered the parody part of being in the public arena. But after his death, the satire has become a flashpoint as MAGA conservatives...
What a good sport he was about it, you know? A much better sport than Trump when he gets made fun of. Trump's like, cancel them. They're low ratings. They're not even talented. They don't even know what they're talking about. Charlie, on the other hand, was like, hey, that was pretty funny. You know, proof that he doesn't take himself as seriously as people want to believe that he does.
Online have alleged Parker and Stone fueled a fire that contributed to Kirk's death. One ex-user...
There you go. Just like the Muslims.
South Park certainly fermented the hatred necessary to get Kirk assassinated. Another outright fumed, Trey Parker and Matt Stone are responsible for this. And a Turning Point USA...
I just have to.
Isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Staffer posted on Telegram, comedy has consequences. Charlie was targeted in the culture before he was targeted in real life. A petition has even started racking up signatures, demanding the network apologize for airing the parody, and has already gotten more than 100,000 signatures in its first day. Comedy Central...
Okay, MAGA, you were supposed to be against this shit. Come on, guys. When did you become the Karens? You were the guys that were like, no safe spaces. I shouldn't have to censor my speech because it hurts your feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings. And now you're like, oh my God. South Park said some stuff and we want to attribute Charlie Kirk. Take them off the air.
Quietly removed the rerun of the episode Got a Nut from its cable lineup, just hours after Kirk's death. The Paramount Skydance owned network slotted in episode 1 from the same season instead. The network did not issue a public statement, but confirmed to industry outlets that the episode was temporarily pulled.
So that you can't really blame them for that. It was still on Paramount Plus. It's been on. I have Paramount Plus, and you could watch it the whole time. They didn't remove but they took it out of cable rotation, to be classy, because they didn't want people bitching at them like, hey, it's very tasteless that you aired this right after this man was shot. But they didn't remove it completely. So it's not, let's keep our perspective here. But I stand by my claim that South Park has gotten really hacky. And this is the second part of my claim that I'm going to share with you. Just real quick, we're going to go through this article from The Guardian, because if you saw the most recent episode, they've finally gone there. South Park, let's rip at Benjamin Netanyahu. So they finally said something about Israel, which I will give them credit for. I think it was actually pretty good. The whole episode was about Kyle's mom They're like, they have these betting apps, they're making fun of the betting apps, which is funny. And, you know, that's the one thing I'll give. That's another thing I'll give these guys. Their humor is always, I feel like it's always timely and also like timeless. Like they make a good statement about like funny things that are happening, but 10 years from now, the statement they made, I think, will still be funny. And it's very hard to do that in comedy. So, like I said, I still hold Matt and Trey in high regard. I just feel like they're getting a little lazy this season and a little hacky. So let's read this real quick, just because I didn't want to play the episode, obviously. So we got to read an article about it. So no matter how hot the political temperature, Matt Stone and Trey Parker's show can be counted on to go for the jugular. And with Brendan Carr in a mountain of poo and Israel's PM in its sights, the latest episode doesn't pull any punches. In 3 weeks since South Park last aired, things have changed. The assassination of right-wing pundit Charlie Kirk exploded already fiery political tensions with the Trump administration and its base, embarking on a campaign of retribution, the likes of which haven't been seen since the McCarthy era, and stating without sufficient evidence that Kirk's murder was the result of wide-ranging leftist plot. Okay, I want to stop right there for a minute, because this is why you're a legacy media outlet, Guardian. Embarking on a campaign of retribution, the likes of which haven't been seen since the McCarthy era. Where were you during 2020 and 2021 and 2022 during the entire pandemic era? Because that was way worse than anything that's going on now. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, guys, but like Trump tweeting that he doesn't like Jimmy Kimmel and he should be taken off the air, and the FCC guy saying the things he said. He just said the things. Jimmy Kimmel's already back on the air, which we're going to get into later. But don't try and act like this is worse than COVID. You fucking fake ass, disingenuous, quote unquote journalists at places like The Guardian. What a fucking joke. This is why you're no longer relevant. I'm sorry, but embarking on a campaign of retribution, the likes of which we haven't been seen since the McCarthy era. That's how the person who wrote this sounds to me in my head. We don't know. We haven't seen any kind of censorship like this since the McCarthy era. I'm a liberal. Woo-hoo! Oh my God. Whitley, how do these people? Oh, I can't even understand. Like,
what's your name, scumbag?
What world do these people live in where they're not fucking? Oh my God. Sorry. I'm just very disgusted by that line. Anyway, let's keep going. Okay. Scores of people in the public and private sectors have been punished for commenting on the situation, most notably late-night host Jimmy Kimmel, whose show was briefly pulled off the air after the chair of the Federal Communication Commission, Brendan Carr, put parent company Disney under pressure to do so. Suffice to say, the situation is far too dire to worry about where a cartoon sitcom fits into it all. But South Park is a special case. The first episode of season 27 revolved around the politically motivated cancellation of Stephen Colbert, another late-night talk show host critical of Donald Trump, while the second directly lampooned Kirk. Again, cry me a fucking river for Stephen vaccine salesman Colbert. Many on the right have declared South Park morally complicit in Kirk's murder, despite the fact that Kirk himself celebrated the parody, which we just showed, going so far as to use its caricature of him on his ex profile picture. Repeats of the episode were pulled for Comedy Central, although it remains available on stream Paramount Plus. Then a week to the day after Kirk's death, it was announced the new episode of South Park would be postponed. This sparked speculation of censorship, although showrunners Matt Stone and Trey Parker roundly denied this, claiming it was simply a matter of a blown deadline, the result of their famously tight schedule. While that seems like an all too convenient excuse, Parker and Stone have never backed down from controversy before. Then again, said controversy has never been this furious before, nor hit so close to home for them. The big question ahead of the newest episode was, what would South Park have to say about all this? The answer is not much. The latest installment, provocatively titled Conflict of Interest, makes no mention of Kirk, although it does tackle the aftermath in a roundabout way. In one of the two main storylines, Trump, upset over the impending birth of his unholy love child with Satan, sets a series of convoluted traps to force an abortion, only for Carr to continually wander into them. By the end of the episode, Carr is badly injured and hosting a brain parasite as a result of toxoplasmosis from being buried in a mountain of cat poo, and is at risk of losing his freedom of speech. Funny, yes. Out of touch and hacky, also, yes. Despite avoiding one of the touchiest subjects of the day, South Park steered headlong into another, finally addressing the genocide in Palestine by way of prediction and market apps. A bet on one of the platforms, will Kyle's mom strike Gaza and destroy a Palestinian hospital, grows so large that Kyle's mom ends up flying to Israel to put a stop to it. So this was good. I thought this was funny. And also addressing a situation like this in only the way that someone like Matt Stone could. For most of the people, the outrage is directed at all sides, with Kyle angrily yelling, Jews and Palestinians are not football teams that you bet on, and his mother proclaiming it's not Jews versus Palestine, it's Israel versus Palestine. Correct. See, and this is why I liked this, despite South Park's recent hackiness. That needs to be said more. There are plenty of Jews against Israel that are not for what Israel's doing. I've said this multiple times, but the biggest organizers of protests against Israel are Jews. Jewish Voice for Peace. So there you have it. Anyway, however, that outrage is ultimately aimed at a specific party, with Kyle's mom banging into the office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and letting rip, just who do you think you are, killing thousands and flattening neighborhoods, then wrapping yourself in Judaism like it's some shield from criticism. I clapped when she said that. I literally started clapping. Because that is the stuff that people need to hear. Then wrapping, if Netanyahu's comeuppance isn't as scatologically extreme as Carr's, it still provides a fleeting moment of catharsis. While not the most outrageous episode of the season, this may be the funniest, with Looney Tunes-like gags. Not the funniest. I thought the one where Christy Noam was shooting the dogs randomly was hilarious. And the prevalence of J.D. Vance's impish caricature both earning huge laughs. And if this week's South Park didn't quite meet the moment head on, neither did it back down. It's good to know that it will continue to go after Trump and his cronies, no matter how hot the political temperature grows. Now, to get back to my point about South Park being hacky, where was this criticism when Joe Biden was president? Of course, now one of the reasons I argued it would be better for Trump to be elected than Kamala Harris is because now suddenly liberals are going to be against war, which I was right about. Maybe not so much on Ukraine, because they're still convinced that, they still live in Cold War era 80s where Russia is our arch enemy and Putin's trying to take over Europe, because they suddenly believe the propagandists who sold them Vietnam, Iraq, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq the second time, Afghanistan the second time. But I do also think it's a little bit hacky of South Park to go after Netanyahu now that it's safe under Trump, and also that they're just going after Netanyahu. As we know, it's like, yeah, Netanyahu's kind of the brains behind it, but it's not just Netanyahu. The United States has been complicit in the entire, population of the country that Netanyahu runs has been complicit. I wouldn't say the entire population. It's much like there's a similar dynamic to here where there's a lot of resistance. And like I said, the largest real life protests against this issue have been organized by Jewish people. To quote, which I think I'm going to end this segment right now by playing you one of my favorite clips, one of my favorite people in music.
Someone else is in town, Roger Waters, Pink Floyd. You're obviously Jewish. He's been coming out with a lot of Israeli, and he's been coming out with a lot of very anti-Israel and what people perceive to be anti-Semitic comments.
I'm not sure that's the same thing.
Right. So what's your position about Roger Waters?
Well, first of all, he's a very talented guy. He's written some of the most wonderful music, along with Floyd, many, many decades, and it's obviously held up, and he's got lots of fans. There is something to be said for keeping your political and other beliefs off the stage. His choice is to use the stage as a platform to further his point of view. There is a difference between a political statement about Israel and about anti-Semitism. By the way, anti-Semitism also involves Arabs. The definition of a Semite includes the Arab world. So I think he's a well-meaning guy. I don't agree with his point of views, of course.
So do you think he's anti-Semitic, or do you think he's anti-Israel
No,
as a state?
I think he is, from my point of view, inflamed, angry about the political situation, as we all are.
So there you have it. Gene Simmons made the point that South Park just made. I think that's at least a year old, maybe 2. So South Park's finally catching up to Gene Simmons. Good job, South Park. Way to be ahead of the curve. Hey, at least they caught up, Better late than never. Moving on. Let's talk about the issue of the moment. Your boy, Charlie Kirk. Now, I have said this before. I attended UVU. I went to that school. I won't get into the details of it. I didn't go there for a long time, but I did go to that school, and I grew up in Orem, Utah. So I know this area very well, and I know the people, and it's a very conservative, Mormon, upper middle class white city. Now, I moved away from there years and years ago. I moved to Los Angeles in the late 90s. But it hasn't changed that much in the last 26 years. I can guarantee you that. So I want to start here by talking about just kind of the whole official story behind this, because it just does not hold up. And I think that's one of the reasons all of a sudden you're having the January 6th stuff come out, and they're trying to keep the ball rolling. So you kind of just let's forget about this. There's a lot that's fishy about it. Everything is fishy about it. And let's get into some of the finer points behind that claim. Now, first and foremost, I think Candace Owens has probably the best, the best takes on a lot of this. Firstly, because she was close to Charlie Kirk before he was really famous. There's footage of her and Charlie in Kanye's documentary. So she was around Charlie for a long time. Now there's a large effort to smear her and make her try to diminish her takes on this, obviously, which to me makes them even more relevant. But I want to start this bit by showing you her most kind of recent take on what the FBI is up to.
Even know if it's considered breaking news when it comes to the feds. I don't think it's breaking news. I think it's just the news. This is what they do. Well, I have it now on a very well-placed authoritative source that the FBI is putting an absurd amount of pressure right now on the authorities in Utah and also the rest of the government in Utah to come out and to say that the Charlie Kirk case is closed. They want it over.
No disrespect to Utah here, but I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to make these criticisms, being that it's the place of my origin. Utah is a very fairy tale place where the predominant religion actually believes that Jesus Christ came to the United States. Now, there is DNA evidence that disproves that. They believe that there's a tribe of Israelites in North America. The religion was founded by a complete con artist named Joseph Smith. They had to forsake polygamy in order to get into the United States to become an actual state. And part of that was their prophet suddenly having a vision that polygamy wasn't okay anymore. And that's what the LDS Church does. Now, I've given them credit too. I think it's honestly smart to have a prophet that has visions and keeps their doctrine and beliefs up to date with what's current, because whenever something becomes inconvenient for them, like in the 70s, when it became inconvenient for them to discount black people, their prophet had a vision hey, black people are cool now. But the Mormon Church used to teach that black people had the mark of Cain and weren't getting to the same level of heaven as all the pretty white people. So I just want to kind of preface this whole part of the story by giving you my kind of personal lived experience in Utah. People who are not Mormon, like my father, call it the Zion Curtain, because the Mormons called Utah Zion. That was their promised land, really. So there's a lot of parallels too between the Mormons and another very religiously run state in another part of the world. So just kind of, giving you a little bit of food for thought as we get into this piece, where Candace has some points to make.
Want Charlie's assassination to be officially ruled lone gunman. It was a lone gunman that did that. Nobody else is involved. Now, why would they? Why would they want that? Right? What are they saying, at least to the authorities? Are they saying like, this is the reason? And I'm sure they're not coming out and being honest or saying something that might ring truer to us, the public, which would be them saying, well, we know who did this and we want to protect those people, so close the case. What they're actually saying instead is essentially, if you don't close the case against Charlie Kirk and rule it a lone gunman, then it might mess up our prosecution against Tyler Robinson. That feels a little bit to me like moral blackmail. Hey, man, we're not hiding anything, but we've got this guy, Tyler Robinson. If you don't close this case, then it might harm our chances of locking this guy up. Yeah, I'm sure.
The things that was curious about this too is how quickly, Kash Patel being like the new puppet at the FBI, he really wants to like prove himself. So he came out instantly like, within 33 hours, we caught the guy. Oh, here's my buggy eyes looking in different directions. Yeah, it's weird. It doesn't add up. And we're going to get into some really gory details about why it doesn't add up in just a minute.
I am sure that they are being just moral. I'm sure they're telling the truth to the authorities. Now, I want to remind you guys, we should take a look at their current case against Tyler Robinson to see if we should accept this narrative, because currently there is absolutely no video which shows Tyler Robinson firing the weapon or even taking aim at Charlie Kirk. In fact, the individual who filmed the footage of the shooter on the roof, the lone video that exists of the shooter on the roof, also told me that he doesn't think that Tyler Robinson is the guy. So how's that going to work for an eyewitness account? When he reported the shooter on the roof to Utah on the campus, he was clear that the person was wearing an entirely different outfit than the ones that they're currently trying to claim that Tyler wore on that day. Remember, Tyler was just supposed to be wearing a t-shirt and some jeans. He says, no, he was in tactical gear. The person that I saw was in tactical gear. Also, that eyewitness told me that gun doesn't even match what I saw. And like I said, this individual definitively has experience with guns. He teaches people how to fire guns. So according to him and what he observed, if he's going to be brought into this court case that they're saying they want to, they want to bring charges against Tyler, he's going to testify and say, no, that doesn't look like the gun. That doesn't look like the person. So how's this going to work? Also, according to the individual that told me this regarding the feds trying to push for this case closure, the feds don't even have any footage that explains how exactly the rifle in particular got onto the roof. That stuns me. That's stunning information, right? Because all we have is, well, in the indictment, he dropped onto the roof at 12:15 p.m. Tyler Robinson just dropped onto the roof. I guess in our minds, we assumed on the basis of the picture that they released the sole picture or set of pictures from the same moment of him walking up the stairs. We assumed that he, like I said, stanky-legged it, the whole stanky leg all the way up onto the rooftop. That was our perception. But it turns out, according to my source, they don't know how the rifle got onto the roof. That's interesting. How are we?
There's also that picture of him at the Wendy's, or not Wendy's, it's Dairy Queen, like 15 minutes later. Like he just, in different clothing than they described. So I want to get into, Candace gets into a little more of the weeds about why this looks kind of wrong. And she has some video footage and tracked down actually the guy or the person who shot the video. So let's listen to a little bit of this as well. This is actually also really good. Candace Owens has been on top of this. I trust her reporting more than I trust pretty much anyone else's. Definitely anyone in the mainstream news.
Origin of a video that actually no press has been done on. There was the video of I assumed it was a student, and I think, we shouldn't make assumptions, who recorded the shooter on the roof. Remember, that started going viral. You remember the footage, and they're like, and there's a guy that's kind of speaking in the background. We can show you that footage right now. Let's take a look at that footage that we're referring to.
Get right up.
Yeah. You think he'd already be in place?
You would think that. So there's somebody on the roof right there? Just saying. He just ran from over, where's my finger? Well, from over there, ran in. And now he's right there. Just saying.
Okay. So this footage proved very...
Have you seen that footage? I had not seen that until she pulled it up. That is crazy.
difficult to track down. And what I mean by that is it was very simple for me to find the account that that published the video and made the video viral. And when I reached out to that individual, they were immediately responsive. And I said, hey, where'd you get this footage from? And the individual said to me, a friend of a friend's family member sent it. So I'm like, okay, you're telling me the chain is already twice removed. I said, do you know who took the video? And he said, no, I don't know who took the video. And when I asked the person who sent it to me to tell me who did, because I have all of these journalists, including yourself, reaching out to me, trying to get to the bottom of it, he just stopped answering me. I said, so your friend who sent you this video just stops answering you? And he then sends me a screenshot of a conversation that they're having on an app that I don't recognize, right? So we are prodding that, and he has been responsive, so I'm sure he'll tell me what app this is. And sure enough, the person says, well, there were two people actually who took that footage, which obviously isn't possible, but there are two people that were involved in taking that footage, and he sends him two numbers. And those two numbers were both Chicago-based. And when I looked up who, whose numbers those were, it looked to me like that was just kind of leading to nowhere. Like, why are these two Chicago-based numbers? It was very weird and very sketchy. So then I have a guy who's on the ground in Utah, and I asked him, a student, to start looking around, fishing around, and seeing if he could figure out who took that photo. Again, operating under the assumption that this must have been a student that was walking by Pelosi Center. And he comes back and he says, I have a number of an individual. This is allegedly the person who took the footage. And I said, do you know that person? Is this a UVU student? He said, no. And I said, well, where'd you get this number from? And he says, well, on the day, there was a guy named Aaron who was walking around and was checking on people. And Aaron is the one that gave me this number. I don't know Aaron even, but he's the person that gave it to me. So then I said, can I have Aaron's number? He gives me Aaron's number. And Aaron also has a Chicago number. So I'm getting from somebody on the ground, and I'm getting from this person on Twitter that all of these Chicago numbers are involved, and that's not making sense to me. And I then tried to text that number of the person who allegedly shot the footage. We didn't get a response until today. We finally got a response from that person. I hop on the phone with him. He explains that it wasn't just him. It was one other person who he was walking with who saw this person run across. Neither of them are students of UVU. One of them said he was a student at BYU, which is Brigham Young University. And he's like, well, I didn't take the footage, but my friend took the footage. And his friend does not have a Chicago-based number. So I am confused. And we ask if he'd be willing to send us the footage and to get us on the phone with the person who actually took the footage. I had a conversation with that individual after all of this running around, hence the reason these episodes take so long to put together, because you're calling people, you're waiting for responses. And what he said to me completely betrays the narrative of what the FBI has put out. I am working to quadruple confirm exactly who this individual is, but he was very much, and maybe this is a poor way of saying it, a straight shooter, said, yes, I have a training. I don't want to give too many identifying details here, but this person himself has a lot of experience with guns and knows guns and, helps to train people in that sort of capacity, and said that they observed that individual, the FBI saying that the shooter dropped onto the roof at 12:15 didn't make sense to him. He said earliest it was 12:22 that the individual ran across, set up, took the shot. And I said, well, you must have been there, because he then sends me I wanted to see all of the metadata of when he took that footage. And the metadata begins at 12:22 and goes into 12:23, the very minute that Charlie gets shot. And he says, yeah, I saw the shot. I had just stopped recording about 20 seconds before the shot rang out. And he said that he told them a description of what the shooter looked like. And it was not the description that the entire world received less than 24 hours later of this person, Tyler Robinson, wearing jeans. I said, was he wearing jeans? He said, no. Actually, this person was dressed in tactical gear and he was wearing a face mask. And he said, according to him, like I said, he has a lot of experience with guns, that this person looked to him like a foreign agent. I don't know if he's wearing all black, how he got that, but he said he was very certain that this person was skilled, knew exactly what he was doing, and was highly trained, like a highly trained assassin, so to speak.
Okay. I think we can all agree that's pretty obvious from how it went down. Just the moment that it occurred, where he was hit, even Caitlin Johnstone had a tweet that I shared in a previous episode about how she's like, I don't believe it was some blue-haired leftist. I believe it was like the typical military-trained right-wing assassin, which everything kind of points to. And this is it's only getting murkier and murkier. But I want to jump over to just to kind of show you the spectrum. Here's another right-wing person who is not buying the narrative. And what's even crazier about this is it's Matt Walsh, who is on Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire network still. So let's listen to a little bit of what Matt had to say.
Yesterday, just hours before the district attorney of Utah County formally announced the charges against Charlie Kirk's assassin, and before he ran through some new evidence that authorities had collected, a left-wing journalist named Ken Klippenstein published an exclusive article on his Substack, which happens to be one of the most popular political Substacks in the country. To much fanfare, Klippenstein reported that he had obtained private messages from people who knew the shooter, which were sent on the day that Charlie Kirk was killed. These messages were uploaded to a private server on Discord, which is a communication service that's popular among young people, particularly young people who play video games. Here's one of the screenshots that Klippenstein provided in his article. As you can see, at 3:17 p.m. on September 10th, somebody wrote, Charlie Kirk got shot. And then around 30 minutes later, somebody writes, dead. Roughly an hour after that, somebody else writes, I just saw that video, RIP, I guess, bro didn't deserve to go out like that, sad. And then according to this screenshot, the messages stop there. No one says anything at all, again, until late the next day on September 11th at 8:57 p.m. And that message comes directly from the shooter. He says he's sorry and tells his friends that he's going to turn himself in. And then on September 12th, this message was posted in the Discord server. It reads, hey, everyone, if you have not seen the news yet, Tyler's post is true. He was taken into custody earlier today for the shooting of Charlie Kirk. While Charlie Kirk's politics were not acceptable to some, I ask that we all say a prayer for him and his family during these confusing times. Close quote. Now, the rest of the article contains quotes from one of the shooter's friends claiming he was generally apolitical. And then Klippenstein offers this conclusion, quote, Trump and company portray the alleged Utah shooter as left-wing and liberals portray him as right-wing. But the federal conclusion will inevitably be that he was a so-called nihilist violent extremist, NVE. Now, to recap, some members of the shooter's Discord group shared a small number of screenshots with a popular left-wing Substack author. The screenshots show that the community was mostly focused on video games and wasn't celebrating Kirk's death in the slightest. Allegedly, the author publishes those screenshots and presents them as proof that the shooter was not actually left-wing. Supposedly, he was just nihilistic and, angry at the world. Very transparently, the intent of this article was to deflect any suspicion from Discord and the people the shooter was interacting with on the platform. And presumably, that's why the shooter's friends gave those screenshots to Ken Klippenstein to begin with.
So I want to stop here for just a second because I'm not showing you this because I agree with Matt's take, because I think Matt's take on this is largely that it was a leftist and these people are just trying to debunk that. I think it's much deeper than that. I think these people are sharing these to show that it wasn't, this guy didn't have a real political reason to do what he's accused of doing. But let me let Matt talk for a couple more minutes here.
But in truth, in reality here, the screenshots raise far more questions than they answer. So let's pull that first screenshot up again. Let's look at this again. After Charlie is shot, according to the screenshot, there's a grand total of 5 messages on this Discord server written by 2 people about the assassination. And none of them are incriminating or even controversial. And these messages stop by 5 p.m. The entire evening of September 10th, after all this had happened, and most of September 11th, the next day until 9 p.m., no one says anything at all. And then, out of nowhere, the shooter confesses. He basically tells an empty room that appears to be uninterested in the Kirk assassination that he did it. Now, this is not evidence, as Ken claimed, that the shooter had no political motivations and wasn't operating as part of a coordinated terror plot. It does not exonerate the shooter's acquaintances in any way. It's actually very odd as far as evidence goes. I mean, it suggests that some messages from this Discord server may have been deleted or redacted before the screenshots were sent to Ken Klippenstein, which would not be shocking, by the way. I mean, these people obviously have every incentive to make it appear as though they didn't know about this and were not celebrating it and had no hand in coordinating it.
I think the idea that someone claiming they did something in a Discord chat is any kind of evidence whatsoever is absolutely ridiculous. What's tied to that? Okay, I have a lot of questions. First of all, is that Tyler's account that said that he did the shooting? Where was it posted from? When was it posted? Did he post that from his phone while he was chilling after the event? I want to see that's why I like what Candace is doing, because she's kind of putting together a timeline here and a sequencing. And I'm sure it's going to include all these alternate pieces, like the guy who we just showed that filmed someone running across the roof right before Charlie was murdered. But I think, well, let's stop there with Matt, because I just wanted to point out that his take is that the most current batch of evidence presents more questions than answers. And so that I think the feeling, regardless across the board, despite the politics of these different commentators, specifically Matt, because like I said, he's one of the guys who is very pushing very hard to make this a left versus right thing, to make this like, oh, a leftist assassinated a right winger because he's a Christian and he was trying to spread values, and these people are just like immoral murderers. You know, that's what they want to. They want to fight. They want us fighting each other over dumb shit like this, like left versus right team sport nonsense, you know? And I think one of the things that the South Park people said in our last segment about how Israel and Palestine aren't football teams that you cheer for, the same is true for political parties in America, even though it's been degenerated to that. Everybody has been reduced to this team sport thing. I saw this yesterday with my cousin, who I love more than most people, with the RFK Tylenol thing. As soon as it came up on the radar, she's like, oh, that's so stupid. And then I was like, well, wait, you know, and she put her headphones on and started watching TikToks to like reinforce her worldview while I watched this breakdown of how, you know, which we'll get into in a few minutes, about the nuance of what RFK Jr. said about Tylenol. So anyway, we need to get away from that. But to keep going with this Charlie Kirk thing here, there's some recent stuff that popped up on my radar that is really interesting. So just to get to the most recent kind of news related to this story, here is a tweet I saw this morning about the roommate, who is very suspicious for a lot of reasons. You know, the authorities were saying that the roommate was working with them and kind of like almost absolving any guilt. But this is really interesting. Vanished or never even existed. Charlie Kirk suspect's trans lover has vanished. Shaken neighbors share fresh fears as new photos show abandoned home. St. George, Utah. So St. George is also so far away from UVU. I don't know if you know this or not, but the way that Utah is kind of built up, St. George is in the south, right next to the border with Arizona, where Orem, where the shooting occurred, is way up in the middle of the state. It's like a 3 to 4 hour drive from St. George to Orem, Utah. So that's another weird kind of, you know, element of this story, is how far away the shooter lives from where the murder occurred. I mean, I guess maybe it's not that crazy, you know, if you're going to do a crime, like maybe don't do it close to home, I guess but it is also odd, and it's not something that I think a lot of people understand. So anyway, some of the comments on this are interesting too. So it was all lies for the FBI to please their pedo king who created the false narrative before there was even a suspect. This is outrageous. This is why there's never been a public statement from him. Yeah. Anyway. You have this meme of Kash Patel. See, and I got to give the MAGA folks credit more than I give credit to the liberals, because the liberals, I believe at this point, actually, I don't believe, I know the liberals are much more of a cult than their MAGA counterparts. And as you can see from stuff like this, where they're actively criticizing the people they were behind and calling them out for their bullshit, which you didn't see very much, if any, of from the Democrats during the Biden years or the Obama years, to be honest. So another element to this story, I think, that hasn't really been talked much about is this piece of news. that a neighbor reported that about 2 weeks before Kirk's assassination, several people with out-of-state license plates were seen coming and going from the $1,800 townhouse that Robinson shared with his transgender roommate, adding that they did not give off a good vibe. So that is another just kind of interesting piece of this story that I don't feel like we are, that a lot of people are not really talking about anyway. And it's something that, you know, these people have lost all trust and credibility. And I want to dive into two last little bits of media, let's say. I want to dive into two last little bits of media that are related to this story. The first one is going to be the world's greatest journalists, Max Blumenthal and
daily with Charlie Kirk, giving him talking points for his upcoming tour, and that Charlie Kirk was pushing back, and that he seemed frustrated, and that he had kind of like he was under the influence of people that Wolicki didn't like. So it was very clear Charlie Kirk was undergoing a transformation. And so if we start from the beginning, Netanyahu is trying to claim Charlie Kirk.
So it was very clear that Charlie Kirk was undergoing a transformation. That's one of the things I wanted to play this clip for, because Max has been doing a lot of reporting on this, talking to a lot of sources, collecting a lot of information. So for him to say that is a big deal, because I know that with a lot of my friends on the left are like, oh, well, Charlie Kirk was a Zionist, you know, blah, 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 blah. The idea that Israel might be involved is crazy. And it's like, I don't know if it's crazy. I'm not saying it happened, but, you know, there's a lot of suspicious shit really. It's a possibility. Let's put it that way. I still believe it's a possibility. There's no evidence. There's no clear evidence, which is something that Max and Aaron have both said as well. But just there's a lot of suspicion based on, let me let these guys explain, because they do a better job explaining it and have done a lot more research than
Kirk.
I have, so.
He thought it was going to go very well, and that none of this would come out. It all comes out. It's now at the point where, like, JD Vance on Charlie Kirk's show after Kirk was killed confirmed something I reported, which is that Charlie Kirk personally stormed into the White House and demanded that they not attack Iran after, like, towards the end of the 12-day war, that they not.
That right there is probably one of the most incriminating pieces of evidence, I think, that, well, maybe not pieces of evidence, but basically pieces of information, because, you know, the fact that it's been confirmed that Charlie was against the Iran thing and was actively vocal about it with the president, that makes a lot of enemies, not just Netanyahu. That makes him enemies of the defense industry in the United States. And where do you think Turning Point gets a lot of their money? So I'm going to let Max and Aaron keep going, though, because they obviously deliver the goods in a lot better, you know, in a lot more of a real way than I do. I'm just here to play I'm just here to be another one of their enablers.
Basically rescue Israel. Vance confirmed that. So Netanyahu had a real problem, and then something else was happening at the same time. And I have no control over this. Like I said in my first piece, there is no evidence that the Israeli government played a role in Charlie Kirk's assassination, and I called it an unsubstantiated theory. All right? So just to be clear about that. Other people drew the conclusion that Israel did kill him, and they were getting millions of impressions on social media.
And given what Israel gets away with every single day, you can understand why people would draw that conclusion. It's understandable in this context where Israel has impunity to do whatever it wants, and is therefore and is so evil in its actions. It's a natural suspect for anything, even if there's no evidence to support it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're the They hold the record for global assassinations.
Yeah.
That's their MO. And they take credit for assassinating journalists every week in the Gaza Strip. They boast about it. But here, this provoked Netanyahu not once, but twice, the second time on his personal prime minister social media channel, to declare, to categorically deny that he assassinated Charlie Kirk. I mean, when have you ever seen a foreign leader come out on his own volition and volunteer that he didn't assassinate a U.S. political leader? It's never happened before. And so many people actually took that as a confession of guilt. I saw it as, for once, Netanyahu may not have assassinated someone, and he just wanted everyone to know that for once he wasn't guilty. But I don't, I'm struggling increasingly to accept the official story as it's, the official story grows murkier and murkier about this assassination. And I'm just, I would like to see a better investigation and more evidence. And the internet is definitely not buying it. So these theories are going to abound and run wild. And, you know,
there you go.
For all I care, you know, I really don't care if people blame Netanyahu or not. I just don't.
I think the point he just made there is probably the best one I've heard about this. Because the investigation has been so terrible, you're going to get these wild conspiracy theories like Israel did it. Because Netanyahu came out right, like while Charlie's body was still warm and was like, Charlie Kirk is such a great man. He was a lion. He was a good friend of Israel. Like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It was like very weird. I responded to Max's tweet about Netanyahu's saying that, like, it's very suspicious that he felt the need to comment on it as much as he did. But also, again, Max, just to reiterate the great point that Max made, when you have an investigation that's this shoddy and this clearly bungled and clearly a joke, you're going to have these wild theories abound because it's clear that the official story is bullshit.
Don't have any evidence of that. Ben Shapiro also came out and denied that Israel did it.
Yeah.
How would he know anyway?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a tool. But this is this was deeply, deeply damaging to Netanyahu's PR and his ability to claim Charlie Kirk's legacy. And why did it matter so much? Because Charlie Kirk stood atop the last base of grassroots support that Israel commanded inside the United States. And it's falling apart. There's a conservative revolt against Israel and Israeli influence inside the US. And they need that base because they need those young white Christian men to go to war for the self-proclaimed Jewish state.
Yes. And that to me is the significance of your story. You know, that to me is what this is all about. It shows that just the very thin grasp they have over the American right and how they're scared of losing it. And they need that to be able to continue being the Jewish supremacist state that they are. And the intimidation tactics they go to against.
Let's be honest, they have a strong grasp on the Democrats too. Look at Hakeem Jeffries. Look at Chuck Schumer. Look at any of them. Even AOC. She's in Brooklyn. She was funded. You know, the story just came out recently that she was like in her early days, she was funded by some Israeli tech guys. So it's the Democrats are just a little bit more sly about it, where the Republicans have always just been chest beating, like, we love Israel types. And now that part of the movement is realizing that if you really want to make America great again, you can't send billions and billions of dollars to a foreign parasite state that just, you know, really uses that money to buy your goddamn Congress and forge policy to their liking in your country.
People, the combination of bribery, funding, and then blackmail by taking it away. I mean, that's how they operate. And, you know, you've been covering Israel for a long time. So how does this fit into Israel's overall longstanding efforts to basically preserve U.S. support, especially from the political bases that are most important to them, like evangelicals and Congress?
Well, Israel's support is completely top down in the U.S. The bottom has dropped out of it. So this is, I mean, these three articles should be read as a kind of inside story of how Israel lost the right-wing grassroots. They're gone. They're completely gone. And
just to close this out, I want to show you some of the things that Mr. Kirk was saying, because again, a lot of people will point out rightly that Charlie was a Zionist. He was very pro-Israel. He was Mr. I love Israel. He was Mr. This and Mr. that. But then also he was not. In recent days, things had changed. And you could see this by, as Max reported, the last TPUSA event where Tucker Carlson spoke and said things like, if you fight for a foreign country, you should lose your citizenship. And people got up and walked out. And Megyn Kelly criticized Israel. And so, I get it. Like it is true that Charlie Kirk was very pro-Israel and very Zionist for a long time. But I want to show you this last piece of evidence, or this last piece of media. This last bit of media, a little bit of media for you. This last bit of media that kind of confirms his trajectory. Just enjoy.
And Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because Jewish donors have been the number one funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. This is a beast created by secular Jews. And now it's coming for Jews, and they're like, what on earth happened? And it's not just the colleges, it's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it. It's like time for you guys to wake up and say no more, draw a line in the sand. I don't care if you hate me. Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. Now, I don't like generalizations. Not every Jewish person believes that. But it is true the Anti-Defamation League was part and parcel with Black Lives Matter. It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing anti-white causes have been Jewish Americans. They went all in on woke, and it wasn't just ADL. It was some of the top Jewish organizations in the country that have done that. In fact, we have seen this with the recent retreat of Jewish donations that are no longer going to be administered to colleges, right? Mark Rowan, Leon Kaufman. Can we get that full list? It's very powerful. The part of it, so that's totally true. And by the way, Tucker Carlson reinforces this. So I'm going to it was quite a day on the internet. Tucker Carlson was interviewing Candace Owens. We have Candace Owens coming up next hour. And Tucker Carlson mentions that Jewish Americans have primarily been financing cultural Marxist ideas. We said this, by the way, last week, and people came after us. We actually said it in a different way. We said, I'm glad that Jewish Americans are reconsidering their financing of cultural Marxism. And people misunderstood it intentionally and slandered us as being anti-Semites. But listen to this. Tucker Carlson is completely correct by saying this, is that the philosophical foundation of anti-whiteness has been largely financed by Jewish owners in the country.
How did these guys not know this was taking place? So I've been in Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard the story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find it very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun. That is an IDF soldier. Right? The whole country is surveilled. And I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand-down order? Was there a stand-down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF.
I kept messing with the tape speed during that because I'm worried that they're going to copyright strike me because it sounds like there's some like Radiohead background music or something in there. And that's how they get you with those TikTok videos. They're like, oh, this is UMG property. And it's like, no, dude, like there's someone talking over it. Like I'm really not going to make any money off your fucking intellectual property when there's someone yapping over the top of your song, dickhead. Like you don't get but that's how they get you. It's one of the technicalities that if you're saying something that, they don't want you to say, they can go, oh, well, you use copyright material. And what do? Get a lawyer? If you know who Rick Beato is, he's been battling with UMG and he's promoting their goddamn music. He plays clips of the songs that he's talking to the goddamn artists about, and UMG's filing copyright strikes against the guy. Like I go and listen, like he does an interview with, I think it was the most recent one that I watched, David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. Like I go and listen to Pink Floyd after that. He does them with producers. He does just a bunch of fantastic interviews, and they come after him with copyright strike because it's all automated AI bullshit, and they just want to shut you down any way they can. So you really got to, ride the waves and cross all your T's and dot all your I's, if you know what I mean. Anyway, let's move on to another great story that I came across recently, and that is Dave Smith versus one of Israel's puppets, Officer Brandon Tatum. Now, this is so great for so many reasons, but I think what I love about this is, So right now, what Israel has kind of realized, or what the Zionists have realized, is they have to get people of color to be Zionists for them. So they have that like Xavier Rousseau guy who's basically like Candace Owens' paid replacement on Ben Shapiro's network. And then you have this guy, the Officer Tatum dude, who's like clearly a paid operative. And then you have that, he's not a person of color, but then you also have the misfit patriot dude on Twitter who's clearly like a paid Zionist operative to like talk to the MAGA guys. Like, look, it's a guy who wears a cap and drives a truck and he loves Israel for some reason. And anytime anyone says anything critical of Israel on the right, he's there to defend Israel for some reason. This very organic trucker guy with a hat. So Dave Smith has just, clearly been on a roll. Another person who ties into the Charlie Kirk thing, because he was someone who I actually watched this. I don't know if you've seen this yet. And if you haven't, I recommend you watch it. But Dave Smith debated Josh Hammer from Newsweek at the last Turning Points USA event. And because of the way the algorithm works now, of course, I'm getting those TP USA events in my feed. So I watched Dave Smith's debate against Josh Hammer, and it's pretty crazy. First of all, how bad Dave makes Josh look. But second of all, how with Dave the audience is. You hear them cheering when he like slaps Josh down. And this is no difference. There's not an audience, but Dave just really smacks this guy around to the point where the guy's like, if it was like a boxing match, the guy's like cartoonishly like seeing stars at some points. So let's get into it. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but there's a lot of really good, a lot of really good footage in this bit of media. In this bit of media, there's a lot of good footage for you. So they're going to open by talking about Tucker's recent bit of anti-Semitism. They're going to open by talking about Tucker. I can't wait to use my favorite clip. Tucker's recent speech at Charlie's funeral that got a lot of people up in arms. Put it that way. Let's make sure we're at full volume here. Here we go.
Shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do about this guy.
Did you just say hummus? You're an anti-Semite.
We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I can just hear him say, I've got an idea. Why don't we just kill him?
You're an anti-Semite.
That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
You're an anti-Semite.
Dave Smith, what did you make of that?
I don't know. I mean, I see people freaking out about this on social media today, but I think what I took from the message was that, yeah, he's telling the foundational story of Christianity and making the point that obviously Charlie Kirk was, when you're assassinating someone for the crime of trying to have open dialogue and discussion, the idea is you're trying to silence that guy. You're against this discussion taking place. And I think the point Tucker was making was that, if killing someone silenced their
two-state solution. Damn. After they rejected the two-state solution. When it present itself, and that needs to stop.
Sorry, I always do that.
Charlie Kirk's his ideas are now going to have, which is I think just factually true, a larger platform and resonate.
I fucked up
for the crime of trying to have open dialogue and discussion. The idea is you're trying to silence that guy. You're against this discussion taking place. And I think the point Tucker was making was that, if killing someone silenced their ideas, then the last several thousand years of Western civilization would look quite differently. And that the idea being that Charlie Kirk's his ideas are now going to have, which is I think just factually true, a larger platform and resonate with more people than they even could have in his life.
As indeed did Jesus Christ's views after his crucifixion. Officer Tatum, I mean, a lot of people have tried to spin this as Tucker Carlson being anti-Semitic, very predictable, because that's the stick used to beat anyone that does anything that may possibly be construed that way. What did you make of that part of his speech?
Well, I want to address the anti-Semitic thing. I think that people, and this is my advice to people who are Zionists or people who are Jews.
You're an anti-Semite.
You got to stop with the pushing the anti-Semitic thing every time somebody says something you don't like. You have to stop. I was just
You're an
talking to a friend
anti-Semite.
yesterday that said he just got bombarded with people calling him an anti-Semite because he shared a post of somebody who, may have had a difference of opinion. So that needs to stop, or you're going to lose all credibility and respect from good people that love you. Now, Tucker Carlson, when I first watched it, I'm going to be honest, I didn't.
To be fair, that was good for him to say that. I should probably slow this down a little bit.
None of it. I don't really like Tucker very much, but and I do think that he has a lot of negative things to say unjustifiably about Israel, but he's entitled to his own opinion. But I can see why some people are thinking that he may have been subliminally saying things that were connecting Israel to this whole thing.
You're an
Now,
anti-Semite.
I don't go down the bandwagon because I can't unequivocally prove that, but I did find it interesting that he had made mention as if Charlie was really an attack or attacking the government, as if Charlie's death was directly associated with government officials, when in fact it was really these narcissistic lunatics that are over-medicated that hate Charlie because he's countering the arguments that we see that's pervasive on campus. The government is not taking extreme positions as the kids on campus are taking. They're brainwashed. I've been on campus. I've been to probably 40 universities. The kids on campus don't live in reality. They live in an alternate reality. They don't live like we do. We pay taxes. We have to go to work. We have to be nuanced about arguments and things that we get involved in. They are completely radicalized. So I think that people—
that's the argument they want to make too. Oh, these kids just don't know any better. They're stupid. All these college kids are just dummies. No, the college kids are actually a lot smarter than you want to give them credit for. Just because they don't see the world in the same way that you do, because they're not paid by the same people that handle you.
Could take it a certain way, but let me tell you this. It seems as if Charlie was very good friends with Tucker Carlson. And it seems to me that Tucker Carlson can say whatever he want to say, and that may be the way he liked to grieve, or that's the way that he wanted to present himself at a ceremony. And I think people should leave it alone unless you have unequivocal evidence that he was somehow trying to do that, because you cheapen the love and respect and dedication that all of the people who spoke at the ceremony had for Charlie Kirk's life.
He's right on this, actually. He's making good points. He's like, why are you guys, he's like, it's stupid for you to say this is some like anti-Semite shit. So I applaud him for that, for having that sensibility. But it's all downhill from here. Let me assure you.
You got to stop trying to go too deep on both sides. Let the man be loved and appreciated by everybody who was on stage, and quit trying to conjure up controversy and conspiracies.
Chris, can I just add to that? Because I do think there's something kind of interesting, like because having a black conservative and a Jewish guy who's like a critic of Israel, there's always like some parallels that I see between those two positions. And I think maybe we could, like, across the board on all of these things, people got to just stop making accusations of bigotry based off of what you're guessing the other person was dog whistling. Like, you're saying that there was a secret message hidden somewhere in what the other person said. Listen, say what you will about Tucker Carlson. I know Brendan said he's not a big fan. I love the guy. Of all the things you could criticize him for, he'll tell you how he feels. I promise you. He'll tell you how he feels. If he has a controversial view, he'll say it. He's not hiding some view embedded in his story here. And people got to get over this, man. There's just, like, if we couldn't take one lesson away from the last 15 years, that making these accusations of bigotry to shut down conversations and making these accusations where there's no tangible evidence that they exist, they do not solve the problem of real bigotry. They make the problem much worse. And everybody should back off of that. Now, I do want to ask, though, I got to say, because as you mentioned there, you said that, your friend was being called anti-Semitic for sharing a clip of what someone else thought. And listen, man, we don't know each other, but literally the only interaction we've ever had is you called me, I think, a devil and one of the worst people in America the other day, also for sharing a clip of somebody else.
No.
Devil?
I'm glad you brought it up, because there's a reason why I said that. It's not that I somehow mentioned something about you just in passing. You shared a post of one of the most disingenuous, evil individuals that I've ever seen online. Nick Fuentes shamed Charlie.
Okay, so listen to this guy. He just went full Karen. This tough guy cop is like, you shared a post that's so offensive by one of these devil men, and I can't believe you would share something so hurtful. It really hurt my feelings as a big tough cop. It really hurt me.
Beautiful, man.
Anyway, here we go.
Ever since 2017, he would come out, harass, accost Charlie at events. He would harass his wife. Him and the gropers would harass my wife because she's white. And this guy said Charlie is a fake Christian and he's disgusting and he should never be able to be on campus without being shouted down. And then he comes out and makes a fake apology. And I felt like you supported that. And then also, my art with you, I had never met you before. I disagree with you on Israel, but I respect that you come with your opinions. But when you were on stage at SAS and you chastised those young people and said they can never claim to be pro-life ever again because they support a genocide, I thought that was the most disgusting thing that any adult man could say to young kids who was just seeking the truth and openly listening to a debate between you and another individual. So
again, this guy instantly, this is how you know he's a paid Zionist, because he goes right to the victim shit. Like, oh, you attacked the children. How dare you attack the children, David Smith? You tried to hurt the children's feelings by pointing out that if they support genocide, they can't call themselves pro-life. How dare you, David? You hurt my feelings. You hurt the children.
I hear you. It's definitely a tiger by the tail.
All right.
Only reason I said that is based on those principles alone. I don't know you personally, but I thought that was disgusting. And anybody who support that Nick Fuentes guy who shamed my friend who's now dead, it bothers me to no end.
Dave?
Okay, well, look, I mean, again, I said I give him all the credit in the world for this. And what was this? This was after Charlie Kirk was killed, him saying that he was a good man, that he's praying for his soul, and urging his supporters not to be violent in response to this. And I got to say, you know, I thought, as I think many of us did immediately after Charlie was killed, and immediately after your first reaction of feeling so horrible on a personal level for his family, you realize this is a very dangerous situation. And I got to say, for Nick Fuentes, you know, being who he is, to have him telling his audience, hey, if you respond at all with violence to this, I completely disown you. We need to be Christians about this. We need to be peaceful. We should be praying for him and his family. I give him credit for that. Whatever other beef you got with him, that's between you two. I don't say I agree with the guy on everything he's ever said. Well, hold on. Let me just respond. I didn't endorse everything the guy's ever said. I said I give him all the credit in the world for this, and then shared the clip of this. Pretty clear what I was saying. And by the way, I didn't chastise the kids at Charlie Kirk's event. I warned them. I warned them that if you're supporting the destruction of a captive, stateless people in Gaza right now, that you will never be able to claim to be pro-life again without being rightfully viewed as the biggest hypocrite in the universe. That's an opinion that I will gladly defend. And I noticed in there, you're not actually taking on that argument. You're just telling me how disgusting I am for having it. So listen, man, I think that if there's one thing, Charlie...
You hurt the children, David. Your comments hurt the feelings of the precious children.
Would have wanted, it probably would have been for us to have this conversation without devolving into insults. You can say it's disgusting if you want to. I think there's a pretty strong argument for my point there. I think it's kind of undeniable. There's a real conflict between being pro-life and then also supporting a policy, the price tag of which is tens of thousands of slaughtered babies, children.
Well, on that point, I will let you respond, but let me just put that directly to you, because one of the reasons I've become increasingly critical of Netanyahu's government, and you interviewed Netanyahu a couple of weeks ago on your YouTube show, and we'll play a clip from that in a moment, but one of my, and he won't do my show, just for the record, since the war started, because I think one of the reasons he won't do me is because I would say to him, you're not achieving any of your war aims. You know, you're not getting the hostages released. In fact, if anything, I'd say you're imperiling their lives more every day this goes on. You're not defeating Hamas, that much is clear. You're causing endless more devastation. Your cabinet right-wing members like...
you know you're in trouble when Piers Morgan is making good points against you.
Modric, Ben-Gvir and others, they're talking openly about ethnically cleansing all the Palestinians. You know, are you not concerned, Officer Tatum, with a fair-minded head about this, that actually it is no longer about a retaliatory self-defensive strike for what happens on October the 7th, but part of a much bigger plan, which many on the hard right in Israel have harbored for a long time, to displace Palestinians from their home in Gaza and from large swathes of the West Bank? Does that not concern you?
Okay, great question. Let me address a few things. I think that Nick Fuentes is disingenuous, and I felt like Dave Smith is intelligent enough, and I'm not challenging your intelligence, but I believe that you can see through the bullcrap on so many other people, and I felt like you should have seen the bullcrap through Nick Fuentes, because he's just saying that to save face now that Charlie is dead, and all the way up to his death, he shamed him. When it comes to the pro-life situation, there's a very big difference between articulating whether a person believes that life starts at conception, not perception, versus a person disagreeing with urban warfare and the way that Israel is carrying out their attacks in Gaza. There's two different things. They should not be conflated. When it comes to my concerns for Benjamin Netanyahu and his tactics in Israel, or his tactics against Gaza, there's a few things here. I think that Benjamin Netanyahu, and because the nature of the interview wasn't really a debate. It was more so me asking him questions that my audience wanted me to ask him and him putting the answers out there, and people can debate that. But I think a lot of people that I know in Israel, including myself and others that are staunch Zionists, think that he is prolonging the war too long and is causing too much damage and irreversible reputational damage. He should have ended it sooner.
At least he admits he's a staunch Zionist. I will give him credit for that. He just said staunch Zionists like myself. So,
and he should have went harder. In America, if we had faced such brutality, rape, people getting their heads cut off. I saw videos of people getting their heads cut off. We would have been swift within 48 hours. The
Israelis showed me doctored propaganda.
Have caused the most damage that you've ever seen to a country in world history. And Netanyahu, for whatever reason, is capitulating, in my personal opinion, to his own personal image, and that he don't want to look bad. He don't want to be shamed. He don't want people to say that he's committing a genocide. So he's playing in the middle for too long. 2 years of this war is too much. He should have eliminated Hamas immediately, and he should not worry about the naysayers. He's darned if he do, he's darned if he don't. He is not committing a genocide in Gaza. I think that's disingenuous.
This guy's like another one of those, like, I'm a good, like, blue collar country person here to sell you a fucking product that I'm being paid to sell you.
At best, because no one committing a genocide would be giving food or aid to a people that they're trying to kill. They would not be sending leaflets and advising people of buildings that they're going to tear down. The population has grown in Gaza from 1948 all the way up until today. 500,000 they started with. They're at 2 million at this point. When did the genocide start? There is no genocide. People can argue the tactics that Netanyahu is displaying in Gaza, but you cannot be superfluous and add these arguments that seems to, in my opinion, be anti-Semitic in many ways. It's not. These people are terrorists, and not the Gazan people, the regular everyday individual, the terrorist group that came into a country and attempted to commit a genocide against Israel. They would have committed a genocide against Israel to a large proportion if it wasn't for the IDF and if it wasn't for the Iron Dome. Let's not forget they shot 4,000 missiles into Israel. They tried to kill everybody. The IDF is going in strategically. I wish that people had not died. I wish that they could end the war so there's no suffering. I wish that Hamas wasn't stealing food. The UN confirmed that 96% of all the aid is being looted. I wish that Hamas wasn't doing those things. I wish that Hamas would take the approach of Israel, which means when the rockets go flying into Israel, the people go into bomb shelters. When rockets go flying into Gaza, the terrorists go into bomb shelters, and they make their people stay above ground.
Yeah. Israel's the most moral army in the world, guys.
To be the blunt force of what they received in a war that they started for no reason.
Human shields.
Hamas knew they could never beat the IDF in Israel. Why did they start the war? Why did they initiate conflict? Why did they rape people and do things like that and videotape it? Why do they still have hostages?
You know the unpalatable. Nick Cruz said it best. If you honestly believe that a bunch of like Hamas terrorists were able to like stop what they were doing under the machine gun fire and like helicopter fire and get hard and rape women, you're one of the dumbest people on the planet. Like, oh, they took Viagra and they just ran in and like with their guns and started raping everybody. It's such a like cartoonishly hysterical fucking clownish thing to believe. It's literally, anyway, I'll let this guy keep.
Full answer, Officer Tatum, I'll come to Dave Smith as well, but the unpalatable answer to that, maybe they did it precisely to goad Israel into a massive overreaction, which would then make Israel and its government in particular hugely unpopular around the world, to the extent that the United Nations is convening today with the UK declaring a state of Palestine. They're going to be followed by other countries. Only really America and Israel's opposing this, but it may well be that Hamas, being a bunch of evil terrorists, thought if we do this, Israel will massively
I think Max said it best, but declare all the states you want. Stop sending weapons. Like, if you're serious about ending the genocide, stop sending weapons. No, we're going to do it. We're going to declare a state. Okay, great. You fucking declared a state. Stop sending weapons.
Overreact. They don't care about their own people dying. That's completely obvious. And it could well play into our longer term game plan. Who knows? But it could be that. In which case, they've fallen for a hideous sucker punch. Dave Smith, your response to, lots to unpack there, but your response. And then also taking in this news today about countries like the UK, declaring there is a state in Palestine.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think Brent kind of almost hit every single talking point there. So I don't know. I mean, I've been knocking all these down for years on your show here. But the bottom line is just that it is just, look, to sit here and say that, even as you say, obviously, Pierce, it's not like Hamas had to be rocket scientists to figure this out. This is what terrorism is. It's asymmetrical warfare. The action is in the reaction. Osama bin Laden didn't think he could take down the United States of America by taking out our towers. He thought he could lure us into a war in Afghanistan, and that might bankrupt us. It was the plan that our CIA coached him through in the late 70s and early 80s with luring the Soviets into Afghanistan. And so the idea that, and look, we did it. We blew $8 trillion in the Middle East since then. And so that's the idea here. And Israel's completely fallen into the trap. But of course, the reason why that Israel has done irreversible reputational damage, the reason why people are abandoning supporting this is really just twofold. Number one, it's clearly not in America's interest. And number two, this is just indefensible. Even if you say that, hey, look, Hamas goes down into the bomb shelters and leaves the civilians up there to be bombed. Okay, but then ain't there a moral question about whether it's the right thing to do to just drop those bombs on the civilians when you know the terrorists are down in the towers? Hold on, you had a chance to go through all this stuff.
I don't even think that's real, but like that's such a fucking like left hook to that talking point. He's like, okay, let's say, so you know they do that, and then you just bomb the civilians. What kind of a cunt are you? That's just a brilliant fucking like slap back from that dumbass talking point. Oh my God. And I don't think this guy's stupid either. He's clearly not a stupid guy. He's just being fed talking points. And so he sounds
I want you to, can I just
you just went off on every
explain what they should
point
do and I'll shut up. No, just explain that
okay,
to me.
I'm just going to finish. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to finish what I did. Well, what they should do is embrace a two-state solution. Ultimately, they should stop occupying a people as they've been
done
doing
it 5 times, and the Arabs rejected it.
No, they haven't. Okay, now
5 times, and the Arabs rejected it.
Yeah, I get it. I know you're going to hit every Hasbro talking point. That's not true.
I'm hitting
lots of books. No, it's not. It's a talking point. It is not true. The Palestinians have never once been offered a full-fledged state. There is not one of those 5 times that they were ever offered a full state. Even, by the way, that's not even your own Hasbro talking point. You're supposed to say 97% of what they wanted, which also is a lie. The point is that it doesn't, no matter what you're going to say here, Israel propped up Hamas for years to keep them in power so that Netanyahu could thwart the creation of a Palestinian state, to then use them as a justification for mass slaughtering a captive people that you have kept stateless for 60 years is morally indefensible. And I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had to actually paint the full thing out. When I was talking about the pro-life analogy, yes, being pro-life is about believing that life begins at conception, but baked in there is also the assumption that you think it's wrong to murder kids. Like the point is that yes,
nobody thinks it's right to murder kids.
Yes, but you're supporting a policy that is doing just that.
There's no policy to murder kids. It's urban warfare. Unfortunately, people die. There's no policy that says you should murder kids.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, that is. Look, when you make a decision,
it's urban warfare. That's such an Orwellian word. Like, okay, well, I guess if it's urban warfare, then it's okay. Just fucking bomb all the kids you want. It's urban warfare, guys. Come on.
Drop a bomb on a building where you know there are children inside of it. Yes, morally speaking,
leaflets,
you murdered those children.
Phone calls. You told them to evacuate.
Not murder. Okay. So how about when they don't?
There's no
how about
intent.
This last attack?
There's no intent to murder them.
Wait, let me ask you a question. Follow up. How about when they don't? What about when they don't drop leaflets? What about when they don't have evacuation orders? They just did this in Gaza City yesterday. How about that? Is that now murder?
Well, who cares if they drop leaflets? Oh, like fucking. The thing is, Dave's so good at just addressing the basic points and knocking them down. He doesn't even need to say how dumb the fucking question is. Whoa, they drop, or the original point is, they drop leaflets before they fucking kill everybody. Like 30 seconds. Here's a fucking leaflet. Great. They drop some fucking leaflets. But he even turns that down, takes that, he takes them at his base claim and says, no, what about when they don't? Because they don't always do it.
They don't have to, no, I could give you an example. They don't have to drop leaflets and give phone calls if they're
so then why are you bringing that up?
I'm saying when you're shooting weapons and Hamas is firing weapons and using it as a military base, they don't have to give leaflets to give evacuation. It's that if it's a civilian building or something where they can eliminate having casualties, they will do that to the best of their ability. But there's some instances where they can't give notification because Hamas is operating out of these hospitals, operating out of mosques. And they have to do what they have to do in this warfare.
They have to. No, they don't. They actually don't have to.
What should they do then? What should they do?
By the way, I love Pierce. I love Pierce. I think it was Aaron Matei who coined this phrase. I could be wrong about that. But someone said the entire Israeli case rests on you saying that nothing justifies October 7th. But October 7th justifies anything. Like nothing. You're sitting here. Yes. Look,
what should they do?
Pick one side or the other. one second. You can pick one side. I'll answer that question, but just interrupting my point with that question over and over again is just so I can't make my case. There is no, you can go tit for tat here. There's been terrorism on both sides. Israel has been occupying Gaza and the West Bank / controlling Gaza and the West Bank since 1967. There's going to be resistance to that. And then for you to say that resistance now justifies us slaughtering people by the tens of thousands, destroying all of Gaza is just, there's no logic in it. There's no morality in it. What should Israel have done? Number one, Benjamin Netanyahu should have resigned on October 8th. After his plan to prop up Hamas, being this genius right-winger that I'm going to...
It's like George, it's the same dynamic as George Bush. Remember after 9/11 when they're like, George Bush let us get attacked on 9/11. They're like, Bush kept us safe since 9/11. Yeah, but he allowed the biggest terrorist attack in history to happen. So Netanyahu allowed the biggest terrorist attack to, whatever you want to believe about it, he allowed that to happen. He should resign.
Keep Hamas in power because, in his words, he could control the height of the flame, and this will balance things and thwart a Palestinian state. When that blew up in his face, he should have resigned in disgrace that day. They should have had a real investigation about what actually happened on October 7th. Our late friend had some questions about that, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
They should have really looked into that, which we've never gotten to the bottom of. And then they should have done...
This guy just interviewed Netanyahu on his show, too. So it's, I mean, you don't get that interview if you're not checking certain boxes.
Surgical strikes, targeted assassinations, as Israel has always done throughout their entire history with the terrorism problem. They have never, until Netanyahu, treated it as a problem for the regular old army, and it should have culminated in a real peace process. They should have said, we are going to take out the people responsible for this by targeted strikes, and at the end of that, we're ending the occupation. We're giving all of East Jerusalem, all of the West Bank, and all of Gaza to the Arabs. It's their decision what they want to do in the future, but if we are attacked, we will treat them as a foreign nation and go to war with them. That's what the response to October.
And by the way, Officer Tatum,
this.
I think the biggest mistake Netanyahu has made, of many actually, in terms of tactics.
So I'm going to stop right there.
We're
going to move on to the next story. But Dave Smith just absolutely mops the floor with that dude and makes him look like a complete tool, which he is. He's like, oh, you didn't even get your Hasbro talking point right. He just mops that dude up. And there's one point where he says something, you can just see the dude smile. He's like, oh shit, he got me on that one. Just the look on his face kind of says it. So that's why I have this this graphic. He's like, no, please stop it. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about Ukraine real quick, because recently Donald Trump tweeted this out about Ukraine, and I just want to read this statement real quick before we get into the actual bit of media that I've got for it. After getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russian military economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it's causing Russia, I think Ukraine... Sorry, I'm not going to try to do a bad Trump impression. My bad Trump impression. I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. With time, patience, and the financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, the original borders from where this war started is very much an option. Why not? Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. This is not distinguishing Russia. In fact, it is very much making them look like a paper tiger. When the people living in Moscow and all the great cities, towns, and districts all throughout Russia find out what is really going on with this war, the fact that it's almost impossible for them to get gasoline through the long lines that are being formed and all the other things that are taking place in their war economy, where most of their money is being spent on fighting Ukraine, which has great spirit in only getting better. Ukraine would be able to take back their country in its original form, and who knows, maybe even go further than that. Putin and Russia are in big economic trouble, and this is time for Ukraine to act. In any event, I wish both countries well. We will continue to supply weapons to NATO for NATO to do what they want with them. Good luck to all. So there's just a lot in that. When I first read it, I was like, what? Like, he said he was going to end the war. What's going on? And no one better to explain what's going on than the boys at the Durin. I think they have the best kind of take on this, and this is going to be a pretty quick run through. But I never even considered a lot of what they say here, so I'm just going to play a bit of Alex's and what their take on this interesting message from Donald Trump about the current state of the Ukraine war. Because I took him at his word. I kind of went like, oh, wow, like he really thinks Ukraine can win. That's pretty crazy given what people who I trust have been saying about what's going on. So here we go.
Let's talk about Trump's Truth Social post and the comments that he made during meetings he held on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly event. So the debate about that Trump Truth Social post, which is getting everyone's attention, is whether Trump meant it or whether he was being sarcastic. What's your take on it?
Well, I have no doubt at all that he was being sarcastic. In fact, I think if you read it carefully, it's absolutely clear that that is what he intends. I mean, he starts the Truth Social post by saying that he's now finally got to fully understand the military and economic realities of this conflict. Now, I mean, that is absurd. I mean, I don't think anybody takes that seriously, and I don't think we are intended to take it seriously. We've just had this whole procession of claims and statements from Kellogg, from Zelensky, from various European officials that in fact it is Ukraine that is winning the war, that it is Russia that is losing it. We have endless claims from Kaja Kallas, Ursula von der Leyen and others about how the sanctions have brought the Russian economy to the point of crisis and total collapse. What Trump is doing here is he's taking all that narrative and he's turning it round and he's throwing it into the faces of those who are saying it. He's saying to them, look, if things are as you say, if Ukraine is really winning the war, if Russia's economy is really in the mess that you say, why do you need security guarantees, more weapons from me, and extra sanctions? Because all of that is unnecessary. Just go on pushing a little longer and you will win and you'll get all the things you want and you don't need any further help from me. And there is a very interesting article today in the Financial Times in which it says that is what European officials and leaders are saying to each other. They heard what Trump said to Zelensky. They read that Truth Social post, but they're all saying to each other what Trump is doing is that he's walking away from the conflict in Ukraine and is preparing to blame them for the eventual defeat that is going to happen there. And it is in the Financial Times.
Yeah, it's a clumsy way of walking away, I have to admit, and it's not a very strong way to walk away. It's a bit of trickery in a way, right?
Yeah, I think it's very stupid. Trump's whole selling point was, hey, look, I'm a man of action. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to get it ended. I can get it done in 24 hours. No one believed he could get it done in 24 hours, but we did think he would be decisive about it and maybe cut the weapons, maybe do something to like actually stop it. And he didn't do any of that. So it's very weak. And, you know, again, as someone who doesn't know everything that's at play, and based on what these guys are saying, maybe it's a somewhat smart move on his part to just say, oh, yeah, you guys can keep go. You guys are winning clearly. Like, go for it. Keep going, guys. I don't know. But I think that these guys have a lot more knowledge and expertise on these types of subjects than most people that I would consult for information. So I wanted to share that with you as part of today's menu of stories. So moving on, I want to real quick talk about RFK Jr. and Tylenol. It's just a mandatory story that we have to discuss because RFK Jr. is one of the few things I'm actually pretty happy about in the Trump administration. And, you know, he obviously hasn't done everything that I like yet or that I want yet. But the fact that he's actually doing things that are really upsetting the status quo is a nice and welcome change. And so this is just another example of things that he's done that have just made people batshit crazy. Just in, RFK Jr. reveals Tylenol use doesn't just have links to autism, but ADHD and liver toxicity in children as well. Why is Tylenol available over the counter, but ivermectin is not? Because our politicians are owned by Big Pharma, but RFK Jr. is telling them to get lost. No, he's selling another Big Pharma product that Dr. Oz sells. I would like to see that evidence of that. I'm not denying that it's true. Everybody has their own interests at heart, but also, you know, I think that it's very easy for people to cast stones. It's just like accusing people of what you're doing type shit, you know. The makers of Tylenol are on the phone with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders now. So anyway, that's the genesis of the story. RFK Jr. said that. And this is something I found actually doing a cursory Twitter search that I thought I would share with you as well. This is a tweet from RFK Jr.'s personal account way back in, I believe, 2022. Yeah, July 29th of 2022 right there. If you saw that before it loaded right here. July 29th, 2022. The authors of a new review of the drug acetaminophen, sold under brand names Tylenol and Panadol, called for the immediate end of the use of the drug in infants and children. So this is him, just being consistent. He tweeted this out several years ago before he was anywhere near, the power of the political power that he has now. So, I'm sure you've seen, there was a lot of moms or liberal puppets who reacted by posting TikToks of themselves sharing, on eating Tylenol while they're pregnant, which I'm not going to get into right now. I think enough people have covered that nonsense, but I wanted to show you a couple of responses to RFK Jr. that just kind of, again, prove to me why he's moving in the right direction. This is a Canadian guy. I'm the father of an autistic child. If any of my followers believe Trump and RFK's bullshit about autism, unfollow me and get a lobotomy right now and kindly fuck all the way off. Autism has been around far longer than Tylenol. This is an embarrassment for Americans. Yes, you are definitely the smart one in this debate, my friend. So I also want to show you another prominent, aside from a Canadian, just a random Canadian guy who's in a band, I want to show you someone else who responded in a similar fashion. The former president of the United States, Barack Obama. We have people in power making broad claims around certain drugs and autism that have been continuously disproven. The degree to which those comments can undermine public health, do harm to women who are pregnant, create anxiety for parents who do have children who are autistic, is violence against the truth. It's this kind of language that they would call stochastic terrorism, violence against the truth. That's an odd phrasing, Barack. And I'm someone who voted for him twice. So I wanted to show you the comments under this post because it's pretty great. Science denier. This is from Harvard. Using acetaminophen during pregnancy may increase children's autism and ADHD. Reminds that of that little it's horse pace narrative we heard a few years ago. Yeah. Here's another one. Come on, Sarah. You didn't have to go all the way to that. We actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concerns today. That's from 2017. How many innocent people are dead because of your decisions? Good point. Fair point. You mean like the company that makes the drug? Here's them posting the Tylenol tweet again. Remember when you pushed parents to inject toddlers with dangerous drugs in order to protect their communities? That wasn't violence against the truth. It was violence against children. So a lot of great points being made in the comments here. And I think that there is a certain level of RFK Jr. derangement syndrome amongst a lot of these people, sadly. So to continue here, I want to show you some additional evidence of this derangement syndrome before we close this out. And this is, of course, the original tweet, which we already saw under Obama's post there about, with the actual company themselves. Here, hold on a second. Let me jump over to this. So here's the actual tweet where Tylenol themselves. If you don't want to believe RFK, maybe believe Tylenol. This is the actual tweet. The ones under Obama, a lot of them were photoshops, but We actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concerns today. This is a response. Sometimes the best headache relief is getting outside after all breaks scare. So this is one of their posts. So the original post was deleted, but they left the response in there. This lady responded. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. And then here's just one more to show you how deranged these people really are. This one is from the Ivy League institution of Harvard themselves. Whoopsie. This is her. I think she's responding to Obama. This is from the Johns Hopkins. Sorry, it wasn't Harvard. It's Johns Hopkins. Maybe that is tied to Harvard somehow. Taking Tylenol during pregnancy associated with elevated risks for autism, ADHD. Johns Hopkins study analyzing umbilical cord blood samples found that newborns with the highest exposure to acetaminophen were about 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD or autism spectrum disorder in childhood, and that is from November 5th of 2019. So let go of your team sport mentalities, people, and stop fucking believing the goddamn propaganda about a guy who's on his way to actually affecting the status quo to some degree, even if it's a marginal one. He is being vilified for clear reasons. And it bothers me to no end that there are a lot of people in otherwise intellectually sound left-leaning circles that do not see this. They buy the brain worms and he shot a bear, Central Park, a whale on the beach, or whatever the fucking retarded story that the mainstream media is selling. A lot of, otherwise intelligent people who call themselves, leftist talk show hosts believe that shit. And it's not very bright. It's one of the less bright things that they have going on. So anyway, to keep the train rolling before we're about to close this out, before we get into it, I want to talk about our good friend. Before we close it out, I want to talk about our good friend, Kimmel, aka Jimmy Kimmel. And let me just start you out with this piece of tape right here.
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
I love how he gets choked up over Ukraine. That's our allies in Ukraine. We might not be able to send money to an endless war there anymore. It's so terrible, guys. This story moved so fast, I got whiplash trying to cover it. But let's start from the beginning real quick here with the genesis of the story, which started a couple days ago. This is September 17th. So about a week ago, a little over a week ago. Jimmy Kimmel just got fired for this monologue. What's baffling is that this must have been read by a ton of writers employed on the show. They just didn't think he was saying anything wrong. Here's the thing. And, a lot of people defended him, rightfully so, but he wasn't really saying anything wrong. He has a right to speculate that the guy was MAGA or whatever. And he shouldn't have lost it. He shouldn't have been fired for saying anything. What he should have done is come back and corrected himself the next night or whatever. But let's watch some of the piece just to talk about it.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes.
After watching Trump smile while hugging Charlie Kirk's wife and seeing that footage of how kind of like nonchalantly he blew off his death, makes me wonder who's really behind it. Maybe it's not Israel. Maybe it's a little more sinister than that even. But let's keep going.
He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction.
So, I mean, that was more than anything a shot on Trump. And I don't think that like what he said about, he's like, them trying to deny he's one of their own is really that big of a deal. And which makes me believe that, leads me to believe that more than anything, this is kind of a publicity stunt. And I think that the way that it moved so quickly kind of proves that. I kind of thought that initially, because now all of a sudden you have someone who is a martyr for free speech suddenly, which to the point that Matt Taibbi and Walter Kern made, good. Hey, now we're all this on the same page. The best thing we can do now is go like, hey, great. It's great that you guys are finally with us on the free speech thing. Welcome to the party. You know, we were here, but a lot of people on the right can't do that. They want to dunk on liberals now because the political ball has switched sides of the field, and that's fucking pathetic. But let's watch. Jimmy was quickly rehired, and of course, got record ratings. Because this was a publicity stunt designed to generate record ratings. Why not? Why not use the political situation to your advantage?
Special friend, moments after we taped our show last night, the Mad Red Hatter wrote, "I can't believe ABC Fake News gave Jimmy Kimmel his job back." You can't believe they gave me my job back. I can't believe we gave you your job back. And there's more. The White House was told by ABC that his show was canceled. No, they weren't. Something happened between then and now because his audience is gone and his talent was never there. That I can't argue with. Shut the up. The freedom of speech is only for me.
That's pretty funny. He goes, that I can't argue with. See, I don't even completely hate Jimmy Kimmel. I actually went to a taping of Jimmy Kimmel's show years ago when I was married. Me and my ex-wife went to a taping because Incubus was the live band. And I distinctly remember the applause people. They're like, okay, you got to be applauding. Make sure you're clapping when the cameras come through. You know, and I think it was Jimmy who said Jimmy Kimmel isn't a comedian. He's never done comedy without an applause side behind him. And I think that really rang true for me as someone who's been to a taping of his show and seen that reality firsthand.
Do not interrupt the president. Why would they want someone back who does so poorly, who's not funny, and who puts the network in jeopardy by playing 99% positive Democrat garbage? Who puts the network in jeopardy? You hear that? There's the threat again. This time straight from FCC Biscuit's mouth. He goes, he says, I think we're going to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative. A true bunch of losers. Only Donald Trump would try to prove he wasn't threatening ABC by threatening ABC. And you almost have to feel sorry for the people who work for him, who try to clean up the messes. They've been bending over backwards to say, oh, he never threatened. J.D. Vance today made the claim that what the FCC chairman said was a joke, which I don't know, maybe that was a joke. I don't know. They go to all these lengths to say, oh, it wasn't coerced.
I mean, it's pretty wild that the president just has a way that he can tweet shit out and bypass the news. So everyone can kind of read it from themselves and take it how they want. There's no tone to a social media post either. So you don't know if, like the Duran guy said earlier, he's being sarcastic about the Ukraine comments or whatever, but it's definitely weird times. So I do want to follow this up by showing you that your boy, Jimmy Kimmel, achieved the coveted record viewers from creating a political controversy award here, according to the good people at Discussing Film. Jimmy Kimmel's show had 6.3 million viewers last night, most watched regular episode ever, despite not being shown in some major U.S. cities. So some major cities apparently didn't air it, which is, I don't think is cool. But I did also want to show you before we close out tonight or today, because it's not nighttime quite yet. It's afternoon. Before we close out this afternoon, I lose track of time when I get to yapping, as you can tell. I just get to yapping and the whole day goes by before I even know what's going on. Here is Jimmy Kimmel celebrating the firing of Tucker Carlson, free speech mega hero. Jimmy Kimmel celebrating the firing of Tucker Carlson back in 2023. Now, I want to say too, I want to preface this by saying I'm not showing you this footage to dunk on Kimmel and his audience and be like, oh, see, fuck you, hypocrites. Like now he gets censored. No, I'm showing you this to say, hey, look, this was you a while back. So now that you've experienced this firsthand, hopefully you're on the same page with us that even if it's someone you disagree with, and to be fair to Kimmel, he did give credit to Candace Owens and Tucker and a couple of people who defended him and said he shouldn't have been taken off the air for the comments. So kudos to him for that. But this is the reason I'm pulling this up, because we should not be allowing ridiculous, partisan team sportism to allow us to kind of like circumvent this one, treasured principle that we should all live by, that, the freedom of speech is not the freedom from consequences, but it's ultimate. And people can say things, whatever they want, even if it's insightful, even if it's violent, even if it's mean. And they're going to have to suffer the consequences for that. If it's insightful, they're going to suffer consequences for that. If it's violent, there's laws against that. You can't incite violence. So the freedom comes with some baggage, sure, but it's an ultimate freedom. And whether Tucker Carlson saying something about white nationalism you dislike, or, an advocate for George Floyd is saying something about Black Lives Matter you dislike, they're all allowed to say it, and the chips fall where they may. So let's see what Jimmy had to say about Tucker Carlson a few years ago, when it was Tucker who was under the gun for saying things the establishment didn't like.
Fox News has severed bow ties with Tucker Carlson. After all these years, they are parting ways, which means he was fired. I mean, that's really what parting ways means. Tucker couldn't be reached for comment. He's already on a plane to Moscow to meet with his manager. But what a shock. I mean, what an absolutely delightful shock this is. Now Tucker can spend more time at home tanning his testicles and touching himself to that sexy green M&M. Sadly, he's probably not done poisoning old people's brains. The question now is, where will he do it next? Will he go to OAN? Will he go to Newsmax? Will he crawl back up Satan's fiery beehole from whence he came? We don't know. One of the most despicable mother Tuckers ever to appear on American television. Fox News.
So there you go. Very classy takes there from Jimmy. And ironically, Tucker has a much, much larger audience than Jimmy does, and is completely independent of any kind of corporate control. So he can't be fired from his new audience, unlike Jimmy, who still works for Disney Corporation and, will have to do their bidding no matter what. So here's another video from Timcast back when Roseanne was fired, of Jimmy kind of, basically celebrating that as well. Another celebration of someone's firing he didn't agree with.
Of terrible things posted online. The biggest story of the day today was Roseanne. Roseanne, you're not going to believe this, but she tweeted something outrageous. I know. Yeah, right. The president did it too. It's crazy. Anyway, ABC decided to cancel their highest rated show, Roseanne, following a tweet in which Roseanne compared an African-American woman, a former advisor to President Obama, to an ape, which did not sit well with ABC management or anyone with a brain, really. So they announced that this first season of the show is also its last, which is a huge blow.
Now, I want to say too, what Roseanne said too is, I'm not defending, and I don't like what she said, but I also want to say that I feel like in a case like that, it's really Disney's decision. And in the case with Kimmel, the same thing. It's really their decision as a private company to fire people that embarrass them. you know, and Roseanne said something that was, I believe it was kind of racist, you know, whether you agree or disagree with the policies of Obama and the people that were employed by him doesn't mean you get to compare them to apes or like make some kind of a racist statement like Roseanne made, especially when you have a very popular television show on a very highbrow corporate network. That's embarrassing to them, I'm sure, and rightfully so. And so they have a right to fire you. The Jimmy Kimmel case, I think, is just par for the course when you're making fun of the president of the United States, especially Trump, who deserves every bit of it and relishes in it as well. But I want to show you just some of the other commentators who are a little bit hypocritical about this. You know, we've always, as always, we're going to bring in our good friends from everyone's favorite show, The View, who in their right mind doesn't want to hear what The View has to say on it, especially if you're a woman. You know they speak for you, ladies. These women speak for you. You know it. That's what we're told, right? That's how it is. Sonny Hostin on Today on Jimmy Kimmel's firing. Our founders drafted the First Amendment to protect the rights of citizens to criticize the government. Sonny Hostin in 2018 on Roseanne's firing. You must pay the consequence. Firing her was the right thing to do. Now, again, it's just pointing out how hypocritical these people are. But again, in the case of Roseanne, I think ABC had good reason to give her the axe.
Our founders drafted the First Amendment specifically to protect the rights of citizens to criticize the government. When you cross that kind of societal norm, you must pay the consequence. And firing her was the right thing to do. I'm thrilled that ABC did it. Our founders.
Yay. So anyway, I really just want people to be consistent. I don't care what your beliefs are. Just be consistent. If you're pro-life, don't support the death penalty. Be consistent. You're pro-life. You can't say, I'm pro-life and I support the death penalty. That doesn't make sense. You're not pro-life if you support the fucking death penalty. I don't care. Oh, well, those people are guilty. So are the babies. The women who had the babies, they deserved it. They had it coming. No. Like, it doesn't. There's plenty of people that are on death row who are falsely accused that are innocent. So you cannot make an argument that you're for the death penalty and you're also pro-life. It's just, it does not compute in any rational, logical mind. Be fucking consistent in everything you do, and I will respect you. If you're not consistent, though, I'm not going to respect you. And that's why I don't respect people like MSNBC either. I'm going to show you again, have the same kind of take. I mean, I haven't. Who respects MSNBC, really? Let's be honest. Like, who has respected MSNBC since, the Keith Olbermann era of MSNBC, which was, 20 years ago now? Maybe 25 years ago? I'm really dating myself, am I not? Anyway, here's another clip of just people being vapid hypocrites. It's your boy, Chris.
Ongoing campaign to
Chris. I was going to say Chris
ABC made the
Matthews.
announcement that Kimmel would indeed be taken off the air indefinitely. And this is just the latest
Totally
chapter
drawing a
in
blank on Chris
Donald
Hayes,
Trump's
sorry.
ongoing
Right
campaign
on his goddamn.
to crack down on free speech, dominate the media, and essentially render the First Amendment meaningless. So it was for the journeyman cable news host Tucker Carlson, just fired from his third network. He believed he could say anything, no matter how vile, no matter how disgusting, no matter how offensive, no matter how dehumanizing or belittling. And if you act like a sociopath over and over and over and over, you will become unpopular on the national stage. That's just like a basic principle. Over time, probably not going to work out well for you in the long run. Eventually, people
I love
will
how
be rightly
his-
offended, disgusted by it.
It's a national stage to them is the corporate media. You'll become unpopular on a national stage, aka the media that I'm part of. And all of these people supported vast censorship during the pandemic. Whether they supported the firing of Tucker and Roseanne and Jimmy Kimmel or not, they all supported people being thrown off of social media and being, fired from their jobs and run out of polite society for having any kind of questions about the prevailing status quo narrative in the legacy press at that time. So all of those people can shut all the fucking way up and sit the way the fucking down on the floor cross-legged because your opinions are meaningless. And I want to close out today with just kind of the final arrow, which I think to me, this is a note of optimism. And I think you'll see it that way too, because this is YouTube admitting what they did during that era. They knew what they were doing. And a lot of America looked like this.
Ain't that America? You and me. Ain't that America?
Former YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki admits they removed over 1 million COVID videos while coordinating directly with Biden and Fauci. So spare me your outrage on freedom of speech, MSNBC guys, The View. Yes, you're right, at least this time, but also you're a fucking fake. And we all know it because of this kind of stuff. Even more disturbing, she doesn't just defend the censorship, she pathologizes dissent, musing about whether anti-vaxxers should be psychoanalyzed for their behavior. So, my note of optimism here is that this is coming out in the open and people are talking about it, not that she's actually saying the right things or on the right side of history or making any kind of, consolation anyway. This wasn't content moderation. It was government-directed censorship at mass scale, erasing science, silencing citizens, and rewriting reality. Not only citizens, but, decorated physicians and doctors, medical professionals.
Hesitancy, videos that cause a public health risk. Where do you want to see YouTube do better?
Well, first of all, we've taken responsibility very seriously. It's been one of my top priorities. And with regard to COVID, that has been a top priority for us. And we have a number of different ways that we address that. So first of all, we want to make sure that if there's information that violates our policies, we came up with 10 different policies around COVID. Then if that's a violation of policies, then that's something that we'll remove. We removed over 1 million videos associated with COVID.
Have you talked to the Biden administration at all about vaccine hesitancy or vaccine misinformation?
Well, we did an event actually with the Biden administration, including President Biden himself, with a number of creators, Fauci as well.
I wonder if there's anything that you see in the way that anti-vaxxers behave on the platform, if there are any data or insights there that could be helpful to people understanding where they're coming from.
I mean, we try to understand what are the different ways that we can break through. So we talked about in this campaign that we did about getting back to the things that you love. So what we really tried to do was get not just from the experts, but also people that were not experts, but who were explaining like, why did they take the vaccine? Why was that relevant for them? And what was their thought process?
So that is a very interesting piece of tape. I want to show you one last piece of data to close out today, because this whole thing got me thinking, about advertising. Because at the end of the day, especially in legacy media, what really controls the dialogue isn't corporations or whatever, or like Israel or whatever it is. What really controls the dialogue is money, ad dollars. And I come from that world. So I wanted to see what Google has to say about how much money, how much in ad dollars comes from the pharmaceutical industry. So I want to kind of show you this because the results are interesting to me. What percentage of, I typed in what percentage of ad dollars is from pharmaceutical companies, and the AI results say pharmaceutical companies spend roughly 9.8% of the total U.S. ad market, according to an estimate from March 2025. Although this figure for total ad spend, not just traditional TV. The actual percentage varies by media type. So here is some additional data. Pharma accounts for nearly 90% of the broader industry's total digital ad spending. I know that the overall percentage is a lot more than that. In 2020, you have to go back a few years to find real data where pharma's 12 billion TV ad budget could go next. Interesting. This is from this year from Adweek. So this is a good source to look at too, because they're an advertising industry. Let's read a little bit of this before we close out here. This is kind of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a longtime critic of pharmaceutical companies running advertisements on television. Now that he's U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, he has an opportunity to do something about it. The U.S. regulators prohibit drug companies from airing ads on TV. If U.S. regulators, the ad dollars will have to flow somewhere. Billions would be up for grabs. Pharmaceutical ad spend has grown from $12.2 billion in 2015 to an estimated $39 billion in 2025. Okay, that right there is an interesting stat, because that's what happened in the last 10 years, COVID. And look at that. Look at the big jump. Look at you can see on their graph. Boom. Hey, we just made a ton of money off you suckers. Let's spend it on more ads to brainwash you. So, that's a very interesting data point. But anyway, the Google AI data kind of downplays the idea. You saw the budget, $39 billion in ad spend. That is what really controls the dialogue. So when you see people, talking trash about RFK and, Tylenol and all this shit, you know who's controlling a lot of the mainstream dialogue with all that money. So anyway, that's all I have for y'all today. Thanks for jumping on and sticking with me. Let's see I got one comment here. The vast majority of Democrats have never owned a firearm, but they're clearly at fault for a terrible act committed by an unaffiliated voter with no. Yeah, no, it's a ridiculous. You're right. You're 100% right. I couldn't agree more. I think the idea that this is even some kind of a left-right thing itself is a misnomer. It's not a left versus right thing. It's being pushed as that so clearly for so many reasons, because it creates such a great narrative to seize on, to push all kinds of different things. So I would ask people to get outside of that headspace, shed that left versus right, Democrat versus Republican paradigm, and just listen to people's ideas. If their ideas are wrong, oppose them. If their ideas are wrong, debate them. Don't shoot them. Don't diminish them. The one thing I can say more than anything before we close out today is Trump supporters are smart. As someone who is left leaning and has always considered myself liberal, a Bernie Sanders guy, I came to the realization that I was propagandized about Trump voters as them being just dumb redneck hicks who want to fucking overthrow the government, love going door to door. They're not. It's not a monolith like that. There are people like that in the Trump movement, of course, but it's not a monolith. Just like the left or the Democrats aren't a monolith either. There's a lot of varied thought, and there's a lot of very intelligent Trump voters. And I realized very early on that I was propagandized to think less of people who saw the world differently than me and pretend like they're vermin who need to be extinguished. And that is the idea that that's like a very left thing is new. It's it's always been a right wing thing. The right wing people are always the one who have loved guns. To Lauren's point there, who have always been the people who were the battle-ready people. They called the left pussies for years. They still do. Oh, you fucking gun-hating pussies. So this idea that it's the left trans people who are suddenly the violent insurrectionists is fucking ridiculous on its face. And if you're a right-wing leaning person, you can see that, hopefully. And if you're a left-leaning person, you can see that clearly, because it's a fucking ridiculous, like Lauren said here, this idea that this guy's a leftist is ridiculous. Also, I don't think this guy did it. I really don't. I don't think he's the fucking culprit. And I showed you Candace's video and a lot of data to kind of back that claim up. But I also am not claiming I know for sure, because there's still a lot that I wasn't there, Anyway, let's close out with something a little more lighthearted. What do I got in my bag of tricks here that I can share with you to kind of end on a little bit of a lighter note that's funny? And let me go into my reusable clips archive here. Yeah, let's end with one of my favorite songs to end with. Just trying to smooth, put icing on that point that Trump voters are not stupid monolith and not the enemy. We're not, and we shouldn't have this mindset that we're battling each other on a team level. Like, you're the blue guys and you're bad. You're the communists, and the red guys like you're the red guys like you're the communists, and the blue guys like you're the fascists. And blah, blah, blah. No, stop seeing the world through that lens. Start seeing people as individuals with ideas and debate those ideas on a case by case basis. That's what I want to leave you with today. Don't be a fucking monolith. Don't be a fucking retard. Don't be one of those people who still sees the world as like, oh, the dirty leftists or the dirty right-wing nationalists. See things on a case-by-case basis and debate people and their ideas on their merit. And the world will be a better place if you do that. And with that, I think we're going to end on voters are a threat to democracy, because there's no greater statement. There's no greater threat to democracy than voters, as you know. And I thank you all for staying on board with me today. I'm going to try to do Friday streams a little more often. I think Friday's a good day for me. So I hope you'll join me again. And please like and subscribe. Please, I'm trying to get to that 1,000 subscriber point where when I hit that, I will stop wearing sunglasses constantly. I've said that. I have I'm not trying to hide my identity. I'm not Tim Pool. I'm not trying to hide that I'm bald. I have a very certain look I like to go with for presentational purposes. But I think, once I get to the point where I'm actually making a little bit of scratch for doing this, I'll take it a lot more seriously, and I won't, be as, I guess, detached as I am now. I think I could be a lot more engaged, and, again, I have no problem showing you my eyes. I'm just, pay me. Thank you again, you guys. I love all of you, and let me know in the comments if I said anything that was really stupid or that needs correcting. And we'll see you next time.
Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? Voters, a threat to democracy. Voters, a threat to democracy. Voters, a threat to democracy. Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? Voters, a threat to democracy. 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 White rural voters. White rural voters. White rural voters. The threat to American democracy. Voters, a threat to 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 democracy. White rural voters. White rural voters. White rural voters. White rural voters. Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? Voters, a threat to democracy. 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 White rural voters. White rural voters. White rural voters. The threat to American democracy.
Alex.
Yes, sir.
I've got the perfect answer for the ADL. They are going to have to listen up. What we did is we brought Netanyahu with us.
I mean, I'm in the twilight zone right now.
Netanyahu, what do you have to say? What do you have to say to Alex Jones right now, Nick Fuentes and Ye? It was bad. It was bad for Trump to meet with Nick and Ye. Okay. I had no idea your voice is going to sound like that, Netanyahu.
So you don't like Benjamin Netanyahu?
I just heard about this guy 2 weeks ago since like the tweet, and I thought he had a funny name. I heard he's like really into he's like a super killer, and I could die for saying this. So in case this the last time you ever hear from me.
Well, look. I'm glad you guys are